You or additions to tonight's agenda? You look like you're ready to make one.
I'm close, but I'm not going to do it.
All right, seeing none, we'll move into public input. Do we have any members from the public who'd like to speak tonight?
Yes, please.
Welcome, sir. State your name and address.
Yes. Hi, I'm Ronald Blinas from 15 Riverview Circle.
Okay.
And I have some comments that I wanted to read. And there's some copies if you would like.
Thank you.
So really, they're focused on the new elementary school and the approach to that, and some questions that I've been trying to understand where things are headed. And so some of this is probably you've already figured out what some of these things are, but I can't find anywhere where I go into any of the documents where some of these things have been talked about, or there's particular answers to the questions as far as this will go. So really what I wanted to do was just to present this to you as observations from somebody trying to find the answers that you maybe have already considered. So with that, if you don't mind, I'll just read this.
Yes, sir.
It's from Ronald Blinas, 15 Riverview Circle, Litchfield, New Hampshire, to the Litchfield School District and the Budget Committee. I did note that I tried to send a copy to the school board this evening, and I'll double check. Andrew noted it hadn't got there, but so I will follow up on that. Regarding the proposed new elementary school on Griffin Memorial Site, I would like to have the following questions/comments answered directly and/or incorporated into the elementary school evaluation process and subsequent public meetings. Question number one, in a recent LSB meeting, it was noted that the projected cost for the new school is now $40 million. Is this the current estimate? And question two, does the current estimate include quote-unquote all-in cost, including required furniture, electronic items, kitchen equipment, and any other items to open and maintain school services? If not, what are these costs and how will they be funded? It was noted in a recent meeting that elements of the old school could be retained, including the gym for use by the town. Is the cost of modifying/demolishing Griffin School included in the project cost? If not, what are these costs, since it will not be possible to leave the existing building in place, and they should be included in the total project cost? The most recent cost estimate to renovate the existing facility was just over $20 million. What is the current cost of the renovation option? When comparing the new to renovate options, the elimination of the cost to modify, demolish Griffin School needs to be factored in to the total cost comparison between the new and renovate options. At a recent meeting, it was question 6. At a recent meeting, it was noted that the projected bond rate for the project was estimated to be 4.75%. With the Federal Reserve effort to lower inflation seeming to be working, it is fair to assume that financing costs will come down considerably in the next 1 to 2 years. It is reasonable to assume that bond rates could be expected to come down to 2.5%. The difference between the total cost for these two rates for a $40 million cost for a 20-year note is $11,157,232. Thus, the cost could be cheaper if we wait for rates to come down, even if we are not able to get the projected $7 million state aid. Thus, there should not be any rush to action until all options are fully analyzed. Question 7. Also, when comparing the new to the rehabilitation options, the total cost, including finance cost, must be factored in for the completion of the cost of the $20 million versus $40 million finance for 20 years at 7 point, for comparison, the cost of $20 million versus $40 million financed for 20 years at 4.75% is $31,018,734 versus a cost of $62,037,468 for a difference of $31,018,734. At first, I thought that number was incorrect, but it's half, so it's logical that it's the difference between the cost of the 20 and the 40. Also, please note that this does not include added cost of demolishing Griffin if it is not part of the $40 million project cost. If it is not included in the new build cost, then that cost differential between the new and renovation will be even greater. What is the projected annual increase for both the new and renovated options for a home value at $500,000 using the current mill rate? In short, my college engineering economics classes, all costs must be added to each option to present a true cost of each project and a realistic cost-benefit analysis. I'm requesting that the true cost of all options be fully vetted and revealed. Thank you for your consideration and attention to these questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Oblanis. Appreciate it.
Is there anything that,
So, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Roblanis, thank you very much for your detailed questions. I'd like to cordially invite you to the school board meeting next Wednesday,
okay. be happy
December
to.
6th. We have 2 public input sessions. If you could send us this, once your email goes through, we can prepare a response to you,
Wonderful.
right? And then if there are any remaining questions, that's a great opportunity for us to address it. I can say, we have answers to all of this. Have you seen the Reimagine GMS website or heard of it, or?
I've heard it and I've looked at it.
On our homepage of the Litchfield School District, the very bottom right, in fact, Mr. Chairman, may I just take a moment and show it?
Yes.
Thank you. On the homepage of the Litchfield School District,
Okay.
right, and if we scroll down just a little bit, all the way
Excuse
to,
me, I just turned that a little
oh,
back.
yep, sorry.
It's glaring.
All the way down, there's this Reimagine GMS.
Okay,
If you click that link, it'll just redirect you to another link, but you click that link, it takes you to all of the information, all of the proposals, all of the options, and there were several options that were considered. All of those documents and artifacts are right here,
okay,
right? So it's a great
Good.
starting point for a lot of your questions.
okay. I will
Okay.
spend more time looking at that.
Perfect.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for coming tonight, sir. Really appreciate
One
it.
other key thing also is that next Wednesday, the architects will be here in this room presenting to the Facilities Improvement Committee answers to a lot of these questions. So that
Okay.
meeting is open to the public also, and it's broadcast on the TV. So that's a really good opportunity to hear firsthand the new numbers based upon where we've gone with the reimagined building
Very good.
project.
Appreciate
So
that.
that's coming next Wednesday, and then it'll be to the board right after that meeting.
Okay, so I'll be happy to attend that.
Thank
So
you
I
very much.
have a question relative to that though. Is just the architect numbers? There's no contractor to say, "Hey, you're in the right ballpark," or "Yeah, that's an architect's budget." So is there like?
So Carrie, no, we do have contractor numbers. So,
Okay.
we've had over the last 2 weeks, I think 4 meetings, including the construction manager.
Okay.
And they are delivering to the architect a square footage price based upon similar projects that they're doing. And so all of that is being factored into the budget. So we have Bonifage and Stone, who is the construction manager that has been selected by the board for the project, attending the meetings and participating in that. So
Okay.
it's not a guess, it's real.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Oblanis. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yep, my pleasure, thank you.
Any other members of the public for input this evening? Seeing none, I will close public input. And next on our agenda is correspondence. Thank you to Ms. Stevens for putting this together. I'll quickly run through our correspondence since our last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago on November 16th. On November 16th, Chair Sun forwarded information regarding the recycling revolving fund to be discussed at that evening's meeting. On November 17th, Chair Sun sent a link to the LEA and LSSA contracts. On November 20th, Chairman Sun sent a link to the updated school board budgets. On November 21st, Town Administrator Kleiner forwarded additional expense and revenue data as requested for the recycling revolving fund. She included a link to the New Hampshire Code of Administrative Rules regarding signs at the town transfer station. Also on that date, Vice Chair Stevens shared a link to the Budget Committee portal, which compiles the documents reviewed by the committee during the budget process. This site can be found at budget.litchfield.gov. And then finally, on November 21st, Library Director Vicki Varick forwarded the letter she read during public input at the November 16th meeting and updated information regarding health insurance buyout for library employees. On November 23rd, Recording Secretary Matthew Sullivan Shared the meeting minutes for the November 16th meeting. On November 28th, bookkeeper Heather Snaman sent the November town budget report. And then finally on November 30th, LEA Vice President, which is today, LEA Vice President Stacy Leary provided insights to teachers' day-to-day difficulties due to inability to hire and retain paraprofessionals and custodians in the school district. She emphasized when there is a single teacher in a classroom that needs a para, it directly affects the entire class's ability to learn when the teacher is pulled away from leading the class. She also noted that Griffin Memorial School currently exceeds both the state and federal recommendations for student to counselor ratio. And that's a summary of our correspondence since last meeting on the 16th. Next, we have review and acceptance of minutes from November 16th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those?
I just have one comment.
Yep.
On page
Just a
2,
second, hold up.
right underneath my name, I sincerely hope I didn't say that the town lied. I try to avoid being very direct in saying such comments. I would say that I believe that the statement from the library misrepresented my position, but I don't believe that the town lied. So if I stated that, I apologize to the town. Would not call anybody a liar. I try very hard to not be very that direct. But I do believe that the statement that was directly named me misrepresented my position, and I was attempting to clarify that.
So do you want to make an amendment?
So I would like an amendment that says that Ms. Douglas noted that she very much believes that the statement from the library misrepresents her position on the library buyout, as Ms. Douglas believes that it should be addressed town-wide and has not directly targeted the library, as was indicated in the letter.
Okay. I know Mr. Sullivan is watching tonight, so we'll make sure he captures
Make me
that.
sound good.
We'll make
That
sure.
was the intent.
We'll make sure he captures that as a part of the amendment. Any other comments or changes to minutes from the 16th?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't have the page, I'm on my phone, so it's under food service. Says Mr. Burke stated that prior to the pandemic, the food service always made a profit. He noted that they used old equipment. I made reference to their profits purchased new equipments.
And
They could have been using old equipment, but they purchased equipment.
so how would you like to amend that?
And also, as far as pointing out that they're losing money, it's because they are not charging enough for the meals. That's only part of it. Charging not enough for the meal, or the ingredients that we're selling is too costly.
So do you have a way you would like to amend that?
Any way he'd like to.
So, any other comments, any other changes from the 16th?
Do we need to wait on the minutes so this is reviewed? So
If
you're
you would
comfortable
prefer.
with the language?
Makes a change. It just, I didn't state they used old equipment. I stated that they purchased new equipment.
As long as you both are comfortable with approving as amended, once Mr. Sullivan has a chance to go back. Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I have a motion by Mr. Burke,
Second.
second by Ms. Douglas. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries 900. All right, we are gonna quickly do town business. We'll give Mr. Leary a couple of minutes for any updates, any questions on the town side before we transition into school business. Any updates from the town, Mr. Leary?
Just a couple items, both good items, actually. We believe we have our police chief candidate, and offer has been made, with a hopeful expected start date in January.
Fantastic.
Been a long search, but we wanted to make sure we got it right, okay? Not rush through it. The other one is, the town administrator was on a at-will, employee
Oh, no.
at-will. Yep, and we've offered her a contract now.
I thought she was leaving. I was like,
No,
no.
no, no. No, I think she's more than proven herself, and so the board decided to give her a contract similar to the one the past TA had at 5 years.
Great.
She's very happy, and things are moving forward.
Any questions for Mr. Leary?
I have a couple from the last meeting. Do you know when the budget committee will see the police contract?
We just voted on it the other night, so it should be coming in very soon.
Right.
It does not, my understanding is that it does not put us over the tax cap, which is a good thing.
No, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
when we're gonna
No,
see a
we'll
copy.
we'll be seeing it, yeah.
So we are scheduled to review warrant articles on December 14th, and I think it would be good to see it prior to that evening, just so we have an opportunity to formulate any questions going into that evening.
Then my other question is, do you have an amount that's gonna cost the town for the holidays you gave the, town employees? The additional ones you gave the other night?
What?
They're gonna get Martin Luther King Day and Columbus Day.
They already got,
Columbus Day was already,
Yeah.
Okay, it was confusing.
yeah,
Because
it was
kept
to us
talking
too a
like
bit.
both
Martin
or-
Luther King Day, they can't be open over there because the state and everybody else is closed, so they can't run registrations or anything like that.
What have they done in the past?
That's a really good question.
They've
But they
used earned
can't,
What's that?
They stated during the meeting they used earned time.
For some employees.
some, not all.
The employees that
anyone that
couldn't
took
work,
it
everybody
off.
else worked.
Other ones would just come in and just kinda hang out, which really is kinda useless. And they shouldn't be using their earned time on a holiday anyways. So,
So have you looked in, has the select board like looked into like another day then? To take away from them if they're not
that
gonna
was
work on that?
discussed and we decided not to.
So if you just get whatever the cost was associated with it, I think Ms. Kleiner made it sound like it's not gonna cost anything, but it's obviously gonna cost something.
Yeah, it's minimal. It's really minimal.
But either way, though, it is a change to the employment benefit package that, so there,
Yeah, it's basically adding Martin Luther King Day. Or Civil Rights Day, whatever you wish to call it. So,
Anything else from Mr. O'Leary this evening?
so is that the result of the union contract, or is that something?
Non-union.
the union contract gets it, so we try to keep them on a level playing field.
I'm just curious as to, I guess I could watch it as to what prompted the discussion to begin with. So.
It was the use of earned time to work on a holiday.
And the fact that the way I understood a lot of the conversation was many of the systems that they need to do that day, registrations, the state, are all shut down.
Yep.
So even if they were open and someone came in to pay something, they couldn't do anything with it. They couldn't go to the bank to process payments or anything. Most of what they do on that day, or most of what they do on a regular day, they don't have the ability to do because state and federal is shut down. That was the gist of that.
But they've been doing something all along.
Anything else for Mr. Leary? All right.
Oh, we do have a question.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, how come the benches out there look like 6 boats? That
Okay.
shrink wrap they put over them.
Oh, because they
Is that for
want,
the unveiling?
they don't, yeah, they wanna unveil them in the spring, but they also wanna keep like mold and mildew off them over the winter. Keep them looking fresh.
I noticed those today when I was here today as well this morning.
Look like wrapping for boats.
Yeah, they shrunk. Somebody, we had someone volunteered to shrink
Yeah.
wrap them. And they brought other benches in today as well,
Over
I
there?
believe, yeah. Not granite benches, but regular benches for people, and then picnic tables will go in the spring. It's been quite the project.
Yep.
We were talking about that before.
And isn't the structure going up soon?
Yes, it's supposed to get here any day, and then, the contractor's gonna be putting it up. But when it's all said and done, we figure it's gonna be worth about $250,000 that the veterans are giving to the town in this project, which is really nice. No cost to the taxpayers. They had that question probably a dozen times.
Yeah.
But it's kinda nice.
Very nice.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we will transition to the majority of tonight's agenda, which is school business and school budget voting. And so while Dr. Jetty and Mr. Totten rejoin us up front here, I'll just, for folks watching at home, do a quick recap of kind of where we are in the process. We started in early November with joint sessions with the school board, where we had an opportunity to receive the budget, and even prior to that, we received the budget about a week prior to that, in late October. Opportunity to ask questions during those 2 joint sessions over at the fire station on November 2nd and November 7th. And then the budget committee, we had our meeting on November 9th. November 16th, sorry, where we had an opportunity to ask questions on our own of the school and the budget, kind of where it stood. We went through those questions that evening. Many of those were answered either here in the meeting or they've been captured in the Google Doc that we have, as well as some additional questions that trickled in. Everyone should have access to that Google Doc. If you need it or you can't see it, let me know and I'll make sure everyone can see it.
Find it, so if you could.
It's posted on the portal. Yeah.
Oh, no, the questions are not.
Oh, the questions are not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you asked, to keep that.
I'll resend that in an email here shortly.
Yes.
And so with that, tonight brings us to the first of two meetings for school voting. Everyone should have updated copies, both digitally that Mr. Totten sent. So you have individual files for each of the budgets, as well as you have updated hard copies this evening. Those are different than the ones we had 2 weeks ago because they reflect the changes that the school board made during votes that they took. Okay. The order that we'll follow tonight, it's at the top of page 2 on our agenda. We'll follow kind of the same flow as we did 2 weeks ago. We'll start with the schools, and then we'll go into HR, food service, buildings and grounds, business, SAU, curriculum, technology, special services, and then salary and benefits. The one request I do have for this evening, and certainly open to the committee, I know you all feel free to give more context to this, please. I know there is at the next school board meeting on the 6th, there is a presentation around food service and potential for board action or, as a follow-up from that presentation. So I think the ask would be us holding on any actions this evening related to food service until we hear that presentation and see if any action is taken by the school board.
Yeah, if I may, right, I can't speak to any action per se, but what I can speak to is there will be a presentation by the Director of Food Service to the board where we have requested very detailed information about kind of the state of where food service is this year, the projected deficits, and talking about potentially, maybe potentially raising school prices, rates again for school lunches or other, right? I don't know what other looks like, but at December 6th, we'll at least have more information to make an informed decision about how to proceed.
Certainly the will of the committee if we want to take any action this evening. I think my request would be we have another meeting right after this meeting. I think it makes sense to hear that presentation, see what the conversation and discussion that takes place with the school board, and then if we choose to take any action on food service, we can do it at our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like just to remind the board that the school board did spend quite a bit of time going through the budget, going both page by page as kind of the bottoms up, as well as taking a look at the tops down as I refer to it. Collectively, the board reduced the budget by $524,876. That's just from the main budget.
Yep.
Additionally, $11,202 was reduced from food service for a collective $536,000 over the budget that the board had received.
Thank you for sharing that. And the numbers that Mr. Cutter's referencing, and by the way, I just emailed everyone with a link to the spreadsheet for all of the questions thus far. There's a second spreadsheet that Mr. Totten had sent that is the FY25 budget changes. There's 4 tabs at the bottom there. The first is budget committee changes, which we obviously haven't taken any yet. The second are the school board budget changes, which captures everything that Mr. Cutter was referencing, actions taken by the school board. So with that, unless there's any other comments, general comments, questions, we'll jump right into GMS.
Just about the questions document, would it be all right if I take a PDF of the current?
Yes.
And put that on the portal?
Yeah, I think what we will do, I didn't do it for this evening. I think because I know Ms. Douglas made this point last year, which I agree with. We want to make sure we read those into the record.
Yes.
So I think at our next.
Yeah, and I'm totally confused though. If the point was we were supposed to add questions and you put a PDF to the portal, then we're back to funneling direct questions through the chair anyway. So
These are designed to questions for the school board or the
Okay.
school district
Yeah.
that may occur outside of these normal meetings. So the idea was if you had a question between the 16th and today, you could have sent it. It was captured here,
Okay.
and the school would. And if you notice, they responded to it with who responded to it and answer. So the idea was we didn't want to wait 2 weeks. If you had a question and we could get an answer between now and then, we captured it here. The PDF would just be to show a record of here's the questions that were asked. It's not that that stops the questions.
No, I understand, but my understanding is that this is just now getting put to the portal. 'Cause I looked earlier. So
I
then-
didn't put it on the portal because we had talked about as they're the answers are live updated. A director may go in and put an answer to a question where the school board hadn't had a chance to
Right.
review that,
I appreciate that. I'm just saying there's a breakdown, because if the purpose is for me to be able to log in and see an answer, but I can't log in and see an answer because it's not there to begin with, there's a breakdown in the way it's working.
It has been here the whole time in this
Okay.
link here. I'm 99% sure I shared this link probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. We didn't post it on the portal intentionally.
Right, so I looked to the portal because that's where I
Yeah,
looked.
correct.
And
And I
if it
should've-
wasn't there,
I
then
should have communicated
couldn't-
that
yeah.
it wasn't on the portal, so my apologies for that. Anything,
I just apologize if I ask a question that's been answered, it's not that I didn't look for it, I couldn't find it. That's all.
any other high-level comments, questions before we jump in? All right, we will start with GMS. And at this time, I'll entertain any motions. I'm not gonna go page 1, page 2, page 3. If anyone has any motions related to the GMS budget, take those now. Felt like ample wait time. We'll move to LMS. Anyone have any motions related to the LMS budget? Put my wait time strategy to full test tonight.
Okay.
Seeing nothing for LMS, move to CHS.
Oh, this isn't one that's saving anything.
Any motions this evening for CHS?
Get one more minute just to
Yes, sir.
finish looking through.
While he's doing that, just a reminder for the committee as a whole, as well as for anyone watching this evening, we will have opportunities to make additional motions next week if we need to, as well as all the way up until deliberative for school. So just a reminder. Anything for CHS?
So what is the current, I'm sorry, I haven't done these things. The current spend on vocational tuition, are we really anticipating a double in the usage?
Which page
So this is page 11. We level funded at 23 actual, is that what you're saying, right? Are we on par for 24 to be the same, similar actual for 23, or was 23 an anomaly
You're talking, oh yeah.
for the vocational tuition? So every other year it was in the mid-50s. 23 statistically currently would be an anomaly because it's almost it's significantly higher. We budgeted 24 at the traditional actuals, which was in the mid-50s. So before I'm comfortable with saying, sure, let's level fund at the highest one, I need to know, is that where we're actually trending to be, or was that a one-off?
So if the same amount of students who are in it this semester carry forward next semester, we project will be a little over 100,000 for this year.
For this year.
So the increase is partly due, during COVID, people kind of stayed more locally. And when COVID lifted and students started kind of seeing the options that they have, as well as Elburn has a new facility, it just drew more and more students.
And we have students taking advantage of the program earlier.
As
Yep.
sophomores.
Sophomores. Yep.
And I think I remember this from the school board conversations. They're offering more programs. Veterinary, is it veterinary science? So they're offering more programs as well.
I'm on the advisory board for the computer science at the Auburn CT, and the board meeting was last week or 2 weeks ago. And they mentioned that the third year now, and it's basically, any of the programs can do a third year, and it's basically revolved around like the business aspect of running that. So if you did construction management, it would be, okay, what's the business aspect around construction management? If you did vet tech, it'd be, what's the business aspect around that? So it's a really good program, it really is.
So the budget that's if what Mr. Totten said, if same number of students this semester or next semester, what's being proposed budgeted for 25 would mirror the projected spend for this year, approximately.
Approximately, yep.
We actually believe we're going to overspend
This year.
this year and next.
So if we're seeing that many students leave our campus for another one, are we seeing a reduction in our actual class sizes here? The classroom participation, are we losing or reducing the need within our own classes here?
Not really. If you look at the enrollment link that's provided in the question from last time, the class sizes are still where they've been historically. The opposite would be true. If they weren't going out, we would have to then house them back at Campbell, so.
So the budget does include a reduction of a math teacher from Campbell, as well as, in a way, a reduction of a special ed teacher, and a special ed teacher would go from Campbell to the elementary school. So, but it really is a reduction of 2 staff at Campbell overall.
Are there any motions or questions around CHS? Mr. Taylor?
Do you have a motion? Give me 1 second to get back to the line on page 25.
Page 25.
Line 519, transportation under CHS athletic transport. I'd like to make a motion to reduce that line by $78,285.
I have a motion by Mr. Taylor. Do I have a second?
I'm gonna second it because I'm interested in the conversation.
Second from Ms. Douglas.
What page is that?
25.
Move to 0.
To reduce it to 0?
Discussion?
So with the current increase in other areas, especially around special education and others, and based on the letter that we just received today in regards to the need for extra paraprofessionals, I don't think it's unreasonable to finally get to a pay to participate. We're still funding the athletics and the co-curriculars. However, I feel that at a 5% increase on the budget, it is finally time to have that conversation that, you know what, something has to give. And if we don't want to give up on, certain programs as far as education is concerned for the students, or CTE programs, for example, again, you have to find a cut somewhere. There has to be a meaningful cut somewhere. I don't think it's unreasonable to at least explore a pay to participate for transportation.
Do you know approximately, and this may be a question for Josh, how many athletes we have at Campbell?
We can get you that number. It's a pretty high percentage. I've seen it in the past. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
We probably need to know athletes per season.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to do some
Because
rough math.
If you have 300 athletes, 200 might be 3-season athletes, and then you have to look and see, okay, if it's $80,000 and you have 200 per season, what does that come down to per household and stuff like that?
I mean, even if
might
it's
be-
200,
Might be an
it's
astronomical number.
400 bucks. Yeah, it's 400 bucks per. Additional discussion.
This came up a few years ago. Mr. Cutter, Mr. Hayes, Kerry and myself were on the board at the time, and I said it then and I'll say it again now. I don't believe we should be cutting anything that bent the kids in the sports programs, even if it's transportation, because sometimes sports might be something that keeps a kid in school. And if he can't, maybe his family can't afford to pay, it might cause him to drop out of school or something like that. And then if you're gonna do it here, you're gonna have to do it with band, and you're gonna have to do it with anything else that takes a bus somewhere. Because you have to be even. And I just don't think we should do that to the kids. I wouldn't support this. There's plenty of other money that can get cut, but right here, I don't think this is a good place.
Impactful as far as the budget is concerned. I mean, you can sit there and try to, okay, I'm gonna reduce supplies by $1,000 for XYZ program.
Yeah, no.
I think everybody heard it loud and clear. The spending is running away and the taxation is getting out of control, and we're still staring at a 5+% increase in the school budget, and nearly that as far as the town budget. as I mentioned last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, you know what, things are going this way as far as spending, but we still refuse to give up that everything horizontal. You can't pay for everything.
Additional discussion?
I'm not against what you're saying. I think it's a bigger conversation though than just removing transportation from the budget. I've struggled too, those ones, say it does come to $400. Now you run into issues where, okay, I had to pay $400 for my son to play XYZ, and he doesn't play a minute. Then now you get parents upset because you're paying money to play a sport and your kid's actually not playing, and it's
Well-
it's a slippery surface.
In addition to that, you know, if you say, well, my son plays this, or my daughter plays this, are you gonna charge a kid to be in the band? And I know they buy their own instruments, but if a kid plays baseball, he's spending $400 on a bat, another $150 on a pair of cleats, at least that on a glove. So they are paying, but I just don't see this as an area to hit budget-wise. I think we leave the kids alone. I think we've got a great program in town, and I wouldn't want to see it impacted by making a cut here.
I do think, and I kind of agree with all sides of this. I brought this up at the fire station during the first meeting and asking questions about fees. Because to Mr. Taylor's point, where are there opportunities to see additional monies come in to help offset some of this? I asked the question there because honestly, I do think, to your point, Derek, that it's a larger conversation that I think the school board should have. And I think it should start there. And that should be a conversation around fees for not just athletics, but extracurriculars. Maybe it starts there. Maybe it's not just the high school, maybe it's also middle school. I would have a hard time cutting this right now, but I do believe having a larger conversation that starts at the school board level about fees and what that looks like for things outside of the classroom, because we had that discussion over there as well, is a good place to start. Does it help us for this budget? Maybe, maybe not, but. Any other discussion? All right, we will do, so the motion is to reduce, let me just recap. Motion is to reduce CHS athletic transportation, 519, by $78,285. We'll do roll call vote, because we do that for our votes here. Mr. Hayes?
That's 78,000, right?
78,000, sir.
78,285.
285. It's the full line item.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no at this time.
Mr. Cutter?
No.
Mr. Leary?
No.
Ms. Douglas?
No at this time.
I'm a no. Ms. Stevens?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Barca?
No.
And Mr. Burke?
No.
Motion fails 1-8. Any additional motions for CHS this evening? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to the HR budget. This is not the salaries and benefits, but the
little one.
the page and a quarter HR budget. Have any motions or questions for related to the HR budget?
And this was just moving, stuff got moved into here, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
Mr. Totten, you want to maybe quickly recap that?
Yeah, so Time Clock Plus, which is the license as well as interface, was part of the business budget, but it's used by HR because that's what clocks in the employees, so we moved it over.
Any motions for the HR budget this evening? All right. I'll go ahead and, I mean, it's on our list. I'll go ahead and bring up food service. Certainly if we,
Can I ask Mr. Todd, just the
Yep.
two big increases here are on the.
talking about for food service or HR?
No, HR still.
Yep.
Is on the software lease and the staff services. So can you just explain why the large increases?
Those are the software lease is the budget that moved. That 17,000.
Yeah.
That's the, they.
Is that the time clock?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the time clock.
You'll see a reduction, not that same amount, a little bit
25.
less from the business lines.
So that's 11,000.
correct.
Okay.
What was the second one, Mr. Leary?
Staff services, on page 2. Total 2830.
That's the.
Is that all
Oh,
part
that's
of
the
the
total.
same?
Yeah, it says total.
the
It
total.
kind of almost double
All
totals it.
encompassed, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Very good.
Anything else for HR? All right, I'll open it up for food service. Any questions or any motions?
We said we were gonna wait, or some of us were gonna wait until.
Yeah, we want to wait till next
Okay,
week.
I'm
please?
told, I had said that, certainly
I'm
the
willing
will
to
of the
back
will of the
that.
committee.
I can tell you right now, I'm a firm believer that it should be a self-funding program. So if we are putting money into it, that would be making a motion to take that out. But other than that, I'm willing to wait.
There's a $100,000 line somewhere.
It's in this line item, right?
This one or HR, there's, within the food services program, as a whole, ought to be self-funding. And so if we are putting taxpayer money into it, I would be making a motion, but I'm willing to wait until,
That 100,000 is actually under, business.
On the business,
wherever it
okay.
is.
Business page, well, it's on my page
Right.
3.
Okay.
I'm just telegraphing, so nobody feels blindsided. That would be my intent. I'm willing to wait.
Any questions for food service this evening that maybe we can capture in advance of the December meeting?
Did we answer the question about food service leads or school year employees? It's answered on the sheet, but I want to make sure that we've addressed it with everybody.
It's answered, but I don't think it's a very good
What is
answer.
the answer?
It says school year employees receive benefits for the full year. We would never cancel benefits for an employee for summer months. So this was something that was never done in the past, and it's something that's been recently added. So I'd like to know when it was added, when they started getting it, because teachers used to get benefits for the full year. That was one of the perks of being a teacher, but the regular staff did not. So
When
it's
you say-
something that's fairly recent.
If you say benefits, you're talking about health?
Yeah, you have health, your retirement, all the things that,
When they
that,
originally adopted this CBA, their
wasn't
collective
in it.
bargaining, this is not how it was handled.
Yeah.
At some point, it changed. So I
Yeah.
believe Mr. Leary is asking, when did it change, why, kind of thing, because this is not how the original, as I recall, the
Yeah.
original bargaining agreements were
Yeah.
approved or implemented.
So
So if it's not addressed in the CBA, there was a change at some point.
Yeah.
Just how did that come about?
So in listening to Holly's explanation of this, she said that it's always been the case of school year employees who are benefit eligible because they qualify by exceeding the work week hours during the year. And so they've always had the benefits extended to them. What is new is the food service leads, in order to enhance the program, their daily time and weekly time was increased during the school year, and that made them benefit eligible.
All right,
So
we
that was
reclassified
a,
them.
that's
That
correct.
might
It
be
was
the
a
change.
reclassification of those 3 leads. Actually, I'm sorry, 2 leads, because the lead at the high school has always had the benefit. The school was opened apparently, and the lead at the middle school and the elementary school did not. So we added those 2 to bring it up to par and to make sure that we were offering the same access to the breakfast program and the lunch program at those 2 schools.
So with that clarification,
No, I
is it-
appreciate the clarification. I think that when we go back to the old warrant articles where people wanted maximum say in changes, that this kind of flies in the face of that. I appreciate why the decision was made, but we essentially turned a position into a full-time benefits of eligible position without anybody clearing that with the people paying the bill.
I would assume the
I-
school board would have approved that, right?
Then previous warrant articles would indicate that for maximum clarification, maximum input, taxpayers wanted maximum say on increases, that if we're gonna change the classification of a position, it ought to have, it's a change of a position type. It
You're-
ought to have been a warrant article.
Are you referring to the advisory article? Is that what you're referring to?
That's how we've always, we used to always operate, yes. So,
so for what you're saying is that they would be working the 10 weeks or whatever of summertime during the school year extra. So they're putting in an extra 350 to 360 hours during the school year. You said because of the additional hours that they work.
I think per
During the
week.
school year.
So they're putting in an additional, over the 40-hour work week, they're putting in an additional 300 and minimum 320.
I don't think it's 40, I
Up to
think the
about
law is 30 hours, it goes
30
over
set-
30 hours.
over
Yeah.
30. I don't
Yeah,
think-
you're benefit eligible.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Prior to this change, they were less than whatever that number is, 30.
Correct.
Say they were 29 hours per week. The change was made to make them 40, 30, whatever they are now.
I don't know the exact number. But
Over
yes.
30, and with that shift, Bob, they could have gone from 28 to 33 hours per week. That would have made them benefit eligible to start receiving those health benefits.
So if they work 32 hours, they get full-time benefits for the year,
31 hours.
31 hours.
Even if they
But-
only work,
Just a
9
couple of
months
years
out of
ago,
Yes.
when you were trying to promote the tech integrator positions, you cut a secretary's position to 32 hours and took her benefits, saying she was no longer full-time. But at 31 hours, you can get full-time benefits? That's, either it was dirty then or it's dirty now. I'm sorry
Bob,
to
I'm
be so
not,
blunt.
I have to go back and take a look at exactly what those numbers were, so.
I think, and I was throwing around arbitrary numbers too, so I think the fair thing is, let's get exact numbers on what the law says, what were they before that, and what are they at now, so that we can not use the numbers that I was making up either.
And I think the other thing is, we need to remember that, we didn't just add hours to add hours, we enhanced the breakfast program. And we wanted to have a breakfast program at our elementary and our middle school comparable to what was available at our high school. So,
we expanded services.
we expanded services.
Without asking permission of the taxpayers, which resulted in the need of this. So again, it's going, circumventing the will, I'm not arguing that it wasn't a
What
good.
do we ask the taxpayer? Can we serve the kids breakfast?
Can we expand the program? Absolutely. So I'm saying, I understand, I'm not saying there was any ill intent or any bad, but the reality is, the taxpayer said, before you make major expansions, come see us first, and we haven't been doing that. Because the reality is, it gets worked into the default budget, and the taxpayer gets no say. They've already said, we want a freaking say.
Carrie,
So,
So, what warrant article are you referring to? You
the
keep
advisory
referencing-
one, for many, a long
Which
time
one?
ago, what was it, 03, 02?
I don't know.
It says expansion of services,
It's
architectural
2003.
changes, expansion of hours.
It says-
An increase of positions, were to go before, in order to provide greater transparency and provide taxpayers with more opportunity to weigh in the changes, or something to that effect. So we've decided that, well, it was a long time ago, people don't really want to say anymore, so we're just gonna ignore that part. I don't buy
Carrie, I
that.
think that's a little unfair.
No, I'm not saying you, I think there are
I-
people here who.
Carrie, I think the key thing is, do you have that exact warrant in front of you?
I have the language of the warrant.
Do you have the following year's warrant also? Because I think we should read them both in context if we're gonna talk
I
about
only have the
one.
2003 advisory warrant article on new positions, which says, petition warrant number 1, as a community operating under Senate Bill 2 RSA 40:13, we support the Litchfield School Board creating separate warrant articles for new positions, increased hours of staff, new equipment, and architectural work. Litchfield School Board will then be continuing past practice to provide voters with greater choice on increases in the school spending. This is a petition warrant article. I do not have 2004.
2003,
Those
the
2003.
next one I believe says, in order to maintain existing level of service. But what we're saying is we're expanding service, so therefore that one would not apply. So, again, my biggest beef, the reality is, that we make changes without asking. Very likely, it would have passed. But then when people get their tax bill, you can say, hey, we asked, you said yes. We're not even giving people the chance to say yes. We're saying, cough it up. And I take an issue with that. I really do. I always have. I've been very consistent in that.
So as a follow-up to this, we'll get exact hours of what it was before and after the change. So we have that information, which I think is helpful to know. Did they go, I'm gonna throw out fake numbers again. Whatever they went to whatever they're at, so we have an understanding of that.
Which I wouldn't have a problem with them giving benefits for the entire year, but have them work the entire year. And if they don't have anything to do in the kitchen, help out the other staff.
But I don't know if that's, and I don't know if that's the way the law works, right? I don't know what the law says, and I think if we can include that in the follow-up.
If they can pull a secretary to be a class monitor or something like that, they can ask a food service person to help clean the halls or something. It's not something that's gonna break anybody's back.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with your thinking that when we're short custodial staff, that there could be an opportunity for services in the summer.
Just
I don't
earn the
think
be-
that's-
earn the benefit that they're, that
I don't
they're
think that's
given.
an
That's all.
incorrect thinking. Any other questions on food service this evening? All right, we're gonna move to buildings and grounds. Do I have any motions for buildings and grounds this evening?
Where you at?
Custodial
I got
services?
custodial next.
Yeah, sorry, it says custodial,
Yeah, it starts
yeah,
with custodial.
starts with
That's fine.
custodial services at the top, yep, page 1. This budget actually has a decrease of 116,000 as it currently stands. Big
Looks
chunk
like a
of
lot of it is electric, maybe?
electric, yeah. That's 33,000 of it.
So electric, propane, oil. Yep,
And all those were rates that were locked in, correct?
that is correct.
So page, is it 8, or is it, the multiple versions of this? Page 8, supplies, CHS grounds, and we have a nice round number of $10,000. In the past, for ground supplies,
Okay.
we've been running, 2021 was 5,400, 2022, just under 5, 23 actuals, 2,500. So why are we looking at 10,000?
So 23 is definitely a trickier year because that's again when we were down grounds people.
I'm willing to consider it
So-
an anomaly, but
Yeah.
we're still twice the standard.
Are you able to see the current spend on that, Mr. Todd?
It's not gonna be that, because again, we're running with one grounds person instead of two, so we don't get to do all of the mulching that we would like to do.
So was 21 and 22 a representation of being fully staffed at those positions?
That would have been, yep.
And so even with slight increases in the cost for equipment,
Yeah, I mean, I
Cost for
could
materials, I
see
mean.
that 10,000 going down. So,
So if I were to make a reduction of, say, 4,000, would that be something you'd be comfortable with?
yes.
And I will make said reduction, please, proposed reduction.
have a motion by Ms. Douglas. and I'll
Second.
Second by Mr. Taylor. I'll recap. It's to reduce line 610 supplies under CHS ground services. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any additional discussion? All right, seeing none. Roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca.
No.
What was that? I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry. And Mr. Burke.
Yes.
So that carries 7-0. Reduction of $4,000. Any additional motions for buildings and grounds?
Not yet. Actually, take that back. Page 11, 460 inspections. We have a recommended budget of 16,000 for inspections. I'm a big proponent of inspections. I think they're awesome and great and totally necessary. However, the recommended in the budget don't seem to be in line with what we've been spending.
So inspections was something that we switched up for the budget that you're looking at currently. So before, it was kind of spread out, and they were pulling from different lines. So we
Okay.
decided to kind of lump it all together. So to be honest with you, it won't be until after we finish this year that we truly would get our actual for the inspections and what we're spending.
So I should.
But this is
see-
what we're projecting to spend. Hopefully, this is what we do spend as well to make sure that things are safe.
So, but I should see, once I have the time to more thoroughly investigate, I will see reductions in other budgets that correspond to relocating these into this budget.
That was last year. So last year, we saw the shift of the inspections.
Yeah, because
So we just
last year
haven't,
was
we're,
16.
last year, which is now this year's budget. So this year's actuals, we haven't seen yet.
Okay.
So last year, you would have seen either reductions, but you also would have seen that there wasn't always reductions because all the inspections weren't part of the budget. They were just kind of grabbed at the time and kind of deducted from other lines. So
Okay.
we tried to capture all the inspections that happened at each of the schools.
All right.
And you expect to do all of these inspections that you have?
That is our goal, to do all of those inspections.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any additional comments, questions, motions for buildings and grounds?
Is that why the budget increase decrease is zero?
Hammer said, you can't touch this.
Yeah, that particular line item did not have an increase because in the current budget that we're in, it was $16,030, and that's what's being recommended for.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading it wrong. Yep, okay.
All right, seeing nothing else for business, or I'm sorry, building and grounds, we'll move to business office.
Which is also school board. It's
School board, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Says school board at the top. Do I have any motions for business/school board budget? This one shows a reduction of about $200,000. Part of that, Mr. Totten, were those software transfers you were talking about moving to HR.
Well, part of the reduction too is that in the fiscal year '24, it captures the $350,000 that went into the reserve funds. And that's not captured in fiscal year '25 because there are no
Got it.
approved warrant articles for that.
Thank you.
This is also where we recognize the decrease of buses from 9 to 8.
What page is that?
Page 3.
Page,
Yep, thank you.
So overall, from last year, it has an increase of 136,000, but that's mainly from the increase for transportation of now 40,000, because we went from 9 buses to 8 buses. So it would have been an increase of 120,000. That got moved down to an increase of 40,000.
And then the food service.
And that is also the food service $100,000 transfer.
It's at the top of page 4.
Yep.
Which is one that we will revisit because I'm marking it.
Anything else this evening for school board or business office?
Did you transfer money last year for food service?
Capital,
So we have to have the food
The
service
money
end
that
at
you
zero.
put in,
So
yeah.
yes, we transferred money last year. We transferred
that was
about
the money that you.
16,000 from the general
Offset
fund,
that.
but that was because we had 127,000 in food service rollover funds, because the year before, everybody
That they put
qualified
in.
for free meals.
Hang on a second, we got too many conversations.
Yeah.
We replenished it.
Yeah,
So it's really not a reduction, it's just a.
go ahead. Could you recap that again? Sorry, I missed part of that too.
So the question was, did we transfer 100,000
Last year.
last year for food service? And at the end of every year, we have to get food service to zero. So to do that last year, we had about $127,000. That was rollover funds from food service, because the year before, every student in New Hampshire qualified for free
Just wanna make sure I
foods.
get it.
So most of pretty much every town was over in food service in a positive way. And then we transferred the remaining amount, which was about 16,000 from the general fund over
Okay,
to
but it
bridge.
wasn't, this is a different line item?
It was not, this is the first year it's been in a line item, which again would be appropriating and raising the tax as well.
Plus the food service used to carry,
Yeah.
they utilized, because they were in the red by 150,000.
Yeah, I was just not sure why there was no 24 budget, because I knew we were under last year too, or over rather.
Because, yeah, brand new line item.
So I do have a question, and this goes back to the transportation/sports conversation in a different roundabout way. Late buses, are we required to provide a late bus?
Required,
I know it's handy, it's wonderful.
I'm not-
I myself took the late bus in high school all the time, but are we required to provide one?
No.
So would that be an opportunity we say to parents, look, it's awesome, it's great, we're happy to help, please carpool, or we charge you?
well, how is the late bus, is it a separate line in here?
Yes,
It
it
is.
is.
Broken out? Where is it?
$27,000. That's for, yeah, it's LMS CHS late bus.
Where is that?
Oh, sorry. That is near the bottom of page 3 under transportation. It's the 5th line in that note.
Because we do provide students the opportunity to go home. We just provide them multiple opportunities to go home. So is that something we are required to provide? That I think there is a conversation that needs to be had before I even I'm just flagging it now so that if and when the conversation comes up, I try very hard to not blindside you. I try to be very open with what I'm discussing and where I'm going, and I am going down this road eventually. So,
Does the majority of the students that take the late bus, are they participating in something after school?
They are.
That's why?
You have probably a couple of things. I mean, sports, or other co-curriculars, and then you just have kids who are after school for help or
Right.
what have you. So those are the three main drivers to that. I think to answer your question, I don't think it's an RSA requirement. We do have to transport to and from school, but the extended school day would not be required. Do we
and
know?
it's not that I'm saying that it's not a wonderful service and that people don't benefit from it, but I'm also looking at a 1 million increase that is going to hurt a lot of people on top of the other ones. So where and how can everybody contribute to this
Without impacting
without
programs.
impacting core programming?
Okay, What's the increase? 1 point what?
Right now, it's currently 1.35.
1.3.
It is, of those, you may not have this tonight, and that's okay, it can be a follow-up. Of those kids that are there, do you know what percentage of them are, like, have to stay after school? In other words, you mentioned they're there for extra help.
I mean,
Are they-
I would say way fewer have to stay after school. I guess there could be an after-school detention. They would have to stay.
There's nothing
That's a
saying they couldn't
disciplinary
still
thing.
stay. It just means we're a small town and
There are
everybody chips
clubs and
in.
extracurricular activities that rely upon these buses.
Boatload of them. actually.
Robotics being one of them, and a number of others.
And this is where you open up that can of words what Mr. Taylor wanted to do as far as sports. Let's take away the buses. If you're gonna do that, then you're looking at all different components.
That's right.
And I think this is minimal, $27,000 spread over the course of the year for that service.
But the reality is, like we've said before, it's a bottom line budget, right? If we truly believe in it, you'll find, if I feel that this is a good spot and you disagree with me, you can find 27,000.
Was there a
somewhere.
motion?
No, I'm just saying, as I said, I'm telegraphing to you where I will be likely going in the coming time as we could look at how sizable the potential increase is in areas where I'd like to see potential opportunities for everyone to chip in.
Any additional comments, questions, or motions this evening for,
I would just counter that with, man, I think the school board really did a hard look at this, and by reducing this by over $80,000 and really trying to maintain the level of service that we can for transportation, I think we've shown a good faith effort to reduce this as much as possible.
So, going back there, you've reduced it, what, 500 grand and 25 million?
536,000.
So 2%. 2%. I applaud you. I do. I think that's great. 2% is a good start. A good start.
any additional comments, questions, or motions on business school board this evening?
Just a point of clarification. To say the program, that's down 213,000 is kind of misleading, because you had a $350,000 special warrant to replenish the funds that you took for the LMS. I'll be nice and call it a project. So really, the 24 budget was $715,000. If this one's $852,000 recommended, it's a $136,000 increase.
Yeah, I misspoke earlier when I said that, and Mr. Totten did correct me and mentioned that it was an increase, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's actually a $136,000 increase.
So one of the tabs that I supplied, that people have had access to, is called Changes in Budget Segments, and what it does is it walks it through from what is showing up on finance
Yep.
to what it was that was voted on last year. So there's a little bit more work to do it, but the reason for that is that we all agreed that we would run reports directly from eFinance without me manipulating those reports. So this is how it came out of eFinance on the main changes in budget segments. You can see where I adjust it for the warrant articles, and then we get back to that $24,180,328 that was voted on for Fund 10.
Yep.
So, for me, it was never a reduction of 200 and something thousand. For me, it was always an increase at this point of 136,000.
Yeah.
And I haven't stated it any other way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and it's just like, it's almost like the warrant article should have been kept separate here. You know, just as a different line item, or even its own special budget.
Does it have to live in that budget?
So it just kind of depends on when it transfers over. It's a timing thing of when we transfer it over. What I mean by that is when we're transferring over to start on the next fiscal year budget.
Yep.
So it pulls over the information at that time.
All right, if nothing else on.
But I also,
Yeah, go
since
ahead.
I just went there, I also want to thank you, because now I'm going to go onto the town side. I'm going to see if there's anything that's done the same way, because it shouldn't be. Anytime that voters give you something on a special warrant article, it should always be kept out of what you're proposing for your budget, and your budget lines. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if it's a one-time thing, if it's not a recurring.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to SAU. SAU budget, 2 pages. It says legal services at the top. Starts with legal services and then to district administration. Motions, comments, questions. This one currently has a decrease of $16.
The legal fund, you have 25,000, 39,000, 34,000 in actuals, 21,230. And then you go to 60,000 for budget for 23, and then 24 and 25 also. I mean, this seems like an area that it could be a reduction.
Are those because of contract negotiations? Is that part of it?
I think if we look historically, you'll see that's about the amount that we've been budgeting. We do have contract negotiations this year. There were costs associated with the land. There are costs associated with other legal matters that we're dealing with, so. What's the year-to-date, Doug, on that? It's pretty,
So year to date, as of like a week ago, it was 27,300.
And a good chunk of that is associated with the land, right?
a portion of that is definitely,
And we also have contract negotiations next year, just.
You have one this year too, right?
This year and next year.
So, I think it's a good area for a cut. So I would recommend cutting $10,000 from the, line 330 legal counsel fund, professional
Is
services.
that a motion or?
That is a motion.
Yeah.
Opposed to 20?
You can amend it if you like.
We'll
I
start
was trying to go
with,
soft.
let's start with, I have a motion from Mr. Leary to reduce line 330 professional services under school, legal services under school board by $10,000. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Taylor. Discussion.
I just think the actuals warrant it over the last 3 years. And there's been contract negotiations, there's been the middle school project and whatever else. It's, I think it's money that can be tapped into a little bit.
When was the last year with contract negotiations?
2
so
years ago.
last year we did not have contract negotiations. The year prior, we had
You had the teacher one, right? 2 years.
teachers and we had support staff
They were on the
together.
same, yeah.
And we did not use legal for support staff. We used legal for teachers. One thing I will say is, just today, we got the engagement letter from bond counsel. So when you do a school building project, you have to hire bond counsel to oversee that process, because that's a whole different legal thing, and the estimated engagement is 9,000 to 13,000 for bond counsel for when the voters support the bond in March.
That
We're
come
going
out
to
of the-
immediately begin to work on that.
So
That
is
come out of the budget or the
factored into
project?
the warrant article for that then?
For bond counsel?
Yeah, if you're saying that as soon as the voters support it, you're ready to go, would that not then mean that the cost would be in the warrant article itself?
Yeah, that's what I
We
was-
have not determined, that's a question for the board, as to whether that
Alright.
gets incorporated in there, or whether that would be used out of the legal fund.
So as a budget committee member, I will tell you, if your intent is to put that money into here, I will make a motion to pull it out.
The reality is that should the voters vote to approve this in March,
Mm-hmm.
the bond and that whole work will have to happen probably pretty rapidly.
It'll be between March and April,
Right,
because,
so that, my point being is that that's not applicable for next year's budget.
I got you,
It's applicable for this year's budget, and we're gonna have to find that money.
right.
Oh, so even still, doesn't.
And then the question is, does that get incorporated into the project costs?
Right.
and
Total
the-
And then
yeah.
back on, fill it, yeah.
So
But either way, shouldn't be in the proposal.
additional discussion on the current motion to reduce by 10,000.
Mr. Hayes?
Well, we can always amend it later.
I would like to amend that, line 330, reduce it by, 20,000 instead of 10,000.
So I have a motion by Mr. Hayes to amend the motion on the table and reduce line 330 professional services legal counsel by $20,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Taylor. Additional discussion.
With respect, I think that's a bit too steep.
Current spend and historical, to me, it warrants it, and we've got to make some serious cuts.
And honestly, tonight we've looked at, we can't do an 80, we can't do a 27. Now if we can't do a 20, like, what are we doing here? There's a $1.3 million increase, and we can't find 20,000 in something that looks to be somewhat justified?
Well, I think we're not talking about the white elephant in the room, and that's gonna be special education. That's, you already know that's where the increase is.
Your
You look
increase
at the
is
rest of these,
especially, as well as salary and benefits.
right, you look at all the rest of these budgets, they're all in line.
They're tight.
They're very tight.
So if I'm a person who has a limited budget and I see an increase
Hey,
in
but
my
what I'm
electric, then I don't go out to dinner as often.
Okay.
So there have to be trade-offs. There's only so much money, there's only so much.
My point is, it's special education is where the biggest increases are. We keep referring to how much this budget is up.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to special education, that's where the meat is, and
That's half of the increase.
So we
that-
can't
that
touch
and-
anything else.
I didn't say you can't.
I think
I
it's
didn't say you
pointless.
can't, but we keep throwing the number out there, how much this budget is up. It's between salaries and benefits and special education.
Okay.
Any additional discussion
For
on
the
the,
big swings, that's where it is.
But
any,
it didn't come up yet on the, you could have changed the order of the agenda, but this is the way we're going.
any additional discussion on the amended motion? All right, we're gonna vote on the amended motion, and I'll recap that. That is to reduce line 330, professional services, legal counsel by $20,000. We will do a roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
I'm a yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Bill, if you said 15, I'd vote yes. I think 20 is steep. So I'll say no on 20.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a no. Ms. Stevens,
No.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca,
No.
Mr. Burke.
No.
Motion fails 3-6 to amend, so we're back to the original motion to reduce by $10,000.
You want to amend that?
It's my motion, I can't, I don't think I can amend my own motion.
You can try again.
Does anybody want to amend?
I think I don't disagree with your logic, but I do think that I'm willing to revisit this entire. Willing to revisit everything. So I'm keeping my mind open.
I'm comfortable with the 10 for right now.
But I like where you're going.
Any additional discussion? All right, so we're voting on the original motion to reduce line 330, legal counsel, by $10,000. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1. Anything else for SAU Legal Services District Administration?
See how much I have 2 copies of that budget. You really wanted me to take a look at it.
I don't know if it's,
Two more here.
I don't know if this is the proper place to ask, but, I was looking for, how much money was left over after last year's budget, before encumbrances and what else? And I don't think I ever got an answer
Sorry.
on that.
900.
Say that again, Mr. Leary,
How
sorry.
much money was left over?
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, that was
Before
answered.
any encumbrances or year-end buys, things like that, and also, the attrition total attrition numbers.
So,
They did put a sheet in there.
yeah, there's
I
a
do have Mr. Cutter's spreadsheet for school board action, but
ending balance of general fund fiscal year 23, Mr. Totten, please correct me if I'm wrong here, was $442,773.
That's what went back to reduce taxes, so.
Oh, you're talking about before that.
The
My apologies.
top number, which is
that?
both under expenses and over revenue, was 1.2 million.
1.2.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then out of that, we had 350,000 for the transfers, which the voters approved, to the reserve accounts. Right, which took our new balance to 882,000.
882, okay.
No, the 1.2 is the one that matters.
And then from there, encumbrances, and then we transferred to food service to cover the deficit. We landed at $442,700 to transfer back to the taxpayers.
And what about the attrition number? You have a lot of open positions.
I don't think we've captured that question yet, and if we
There was a
haven't,
question somewhere. I thought
if we
I
haven't,
had
that's
one.
my fault, for that not getting into the sheet.
I had asked that in the school board meeting.
Yeah, I thought there was a number provided.
The number provided, I believe, was 180,000.
Oh, I remember a much higher number than that.
Let's,
No, that's
Oh, for
for,
last year?
for
Oh,
last year was 180,000. There's a higher number as far as unfilled positions.
that's the number
but
I'm
Which is
thinking.
different than, yeah.
What's your number
Right.
for unfilled, if you have it?
I have that.
Yeah, it's $180,581.
that was attrition.
That was last year into this year or last year?
That was,
Currently now.
Currently now?
Yeah.
Okay. So based on last year's budget, roles filled this year is $180,000.
Yeah, and last year, the school board, I believe, had 150,000 from attrition, ended
position
up being
costs.
180,000.
Vacant
Yeah.
positions.
This year, school board did 150,000 again for
Shut
attrition.
up. Can you speak to that, Mr. Cutter, please?
Vacant position cost, which was presented and reviewed at the school board meeting, is $837,775.
There was a breakdown that showed.
There is.
That broken out by positions. Could you share that to the budget committee, please? Because that was public information that was shared at the school board meeting.
I will send it right now.
Thank
So,
you.
and that's for current, so that's for this year.
This year, current positions that are not filled today or
Well, as of
a month ago.
a week ago, 2 weeks ago. yeah.
You're sending that, Andrew?
Yeah, and Mr. Cutter's gonna share
It
that.
is sent.
I know that that's one of the areas when it came to the town voting that the committee went after was, open positions, and so I think it is fair,
All right, do we have
some of it.
anything else on, we're still on SAU. Anything else on SAU? All right, we're gonna move to curriculum. At the top, it says improvement / instruction. So it has a decrease currently of $46,199. Actually,
So.
no, that's not,
It hasn't, yeah, so
Increase.
increase of,
73.
well, 7,300,
Thank you.
yeah.
So when did that
I don't see an increase. On the general fund, it says a decrease of 46,000.
Yeah, so fortunately, we have to use that tab, on that tab that says changes in budget segments.
Yeah.
So on that tab, which is part,
I don't even go there.
so that shows you where the increase.
It was the, so what that was the encumbrances from last year's end of fund balance when the school board voted to spend additional monies to take a multi-year payment on was it a reading program, math program, and do a 3-year contract to save money long-term.
You got a far cost advantageous rate to enter a contract, and so we encumbered the money, but you're seeing that reduction in the budget.
No,
Correct,
just
so
that he
that-
mentioned an increase overall, and I saw a decrease, so.
Yeah,
I go off
and
of
again,
what you guys
I
give
started
us.
by looking at the bottom of the page before, and I moved to the tab as soon as I said it. So yeah, it's actually an increase of $7,300.
Yeah, and that's pretty minimal.
Any motions, comments, questions, curriculum budget? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and say it now because I think it's fair to say it. And Just publicly speaking, if there are any future motions on this budget, I will abstain from them. There's a line item under 650 software, Mystery Science Middle School for $1,395. That is my company. So if there are any future motions, just putting it out there, I will abstain.
I appreciate the transparency.
Thank you for the honesty.
All right. Next we have technology. Starts with computer instruction at the top. And let me check my tab. We're currently showing an increase in technology of $40,028.
What's the difference on this one then?
That is, there's
Computer
36.
Instruction as well? Is that what this is? Okay.
Yeah, it starts with computer instruction at the top, yes.
Okay,
The majority of the increase comes from page 2,
yeah.
which is the 3-year support and maintenance for firewall web
Yep.
filters. So again, if we buy that,
Yep.
it's a better deal. We know we're gonna need it.
Yeah.
Do we survey 8th grade families to see if they intend to continue on with 9th grade? And I ask simply because I know that there was a significant reduction between last year's 8th grade and this year's 9th grade. And since a lot of our numbers for freshmen are based on the numbers we have in our projections, if our projections are wrong, do we have a way of trying to get ahead of that?
We do survey, we ask, but I will tell
Obviously,
you.
it's non-binding, non-committal, but at the same time, be good to know.
So we do survey and ask, but I will tell you that right now, some families haven't made their mind up. So they would probably err by saying, we intend to be at Campbell to make sure, but
Right.
there are plenty of families who haven't decided what they're doing.
Very interesting trend to see, just because, like I said, it's been some interesting changes.
I should have asked this question, and I thought about it when we were at the fire station. I didn't ask it. If you don't have the answer this evening, then we can ask Chris to capture it. The bottom of page 3, under line 738, equipment replacement, LMS lab replacement for $22,500. What lab is that's being replaced?
That is Robin Corbeil's.
So it's a specialized lab with specialized software that she's running. She does computer science in there.
It's the only lab we have at the middle school.
Right. Thank you. I've asked this. I think I've asked this every year I've been on here. Like I'm a big believer because every kid has a device that we don't need regular computer labs unless there's a special lab like that requires special software that doesn't run on the Chromebooks.
So in the past, there were 2 labs. Steve Frazier was in one lab, and then Robin had the other. Steve's lab was phased out, and for exactly that reason. They have Chromebooks, they can do the writing on that.
Yep.
And then Robin's will be the one that is addressed here.
Okay.
And that is more specialized.
Okay. Thank you.
Wasn't the same thing in the high school, then we have 2 and we went to 1? Am I wrong?
Last
I
year,
think we went from 3 to 2, maybe. It was we went down by 1.
Yep.
And we had a discussion around the
CHS
library
replacement is
computers being
this year's
replaced too.
That's that one, right? That's what he's talking about?
Yeah, it's the bottom of page 3.
738.
Oh, 738.
Yeah, it says LMS lab replacement, $22,500. All right. Any motions, comments, questions for technology this evening?
That's pretty level. Spent down.
We only have 2 left. Next we have special services. Starts with special education programs at the top of the page. This one has an increase of $638,642.
Did the questions that were posted include the breakdown that was requested of out-of-district tuition?
I'm looking. Just one second. You talking about the cost to Lighthouse? Is that what you're
Well,
talking
in the
about?
past, we used to get like this place, the 7 different places we send kids. and then itemized costs.
So the question,
So the
Yeah.
comment was, I had asked, and they said, if
I
you
see it.
ask, we will provide it. And
So
I asked.
I'm looking at the question. It may not have been fully captured. So it says, question says examples of actual increases in OOD schools. Lighthouse 22 to 23 to 24. So Lighthouse was captured as the answer. The others were not, because I think the question was probably read just asking for Lighthouse.
No, I wanted to actually be itemized breakdown, like we used to get.
Can we get the others as well,
We can.
please?
Thank you.
Lighthouse is the one steady one that we definitely have used. That's why we're showing that 36% increase over the 4-year window. But we could look at others.
That's the cost for one student to go to Lighthouse? The one you're showing
That's
there?
exactly right.
Okay.
That's
We have-
one student
Do we
tuition.
have multiple going to Lighthouse, or?
I'd have to double check the sheet, but I believe that is accurate.
Any motions, comments, questions on special services?
On page 2, at the very top of the page, line 800, you have zeros all the way across until 24, where you had a negative 51,000. What is that? And you're not asking for anything this year either. So you're showing it as an increase, but
Which page was that, Bob?
Which page?
page 2.
Yep.
It's the very top.
Oh, it's on our page of one, if you're looking at.
Oh,
Sorry,
800.
yeah.
So that was from the, I forget if it was the school board or the budget committee last year that reduced the special ed budget by 51,800. And we just put it in a line.
So you put the cut back in, just, is that what that is?
Well, they rounded it up to 0. Well, yeah, actually, it would be put back in.
Well, it shows, yeah, because you took it from negative 51,800 to 0, so essentially it's putting the 51,800 back in.
Well, what we do have every year is we look at what is currently needed for the next year. So we don't necessarily, we're not looking back and seeing what we're replenishing. We're looking at what do our current students need next year, I think is a better way of putting it. So we're not starting at this year. We're
Yep.
like, okay,
No, you're right.
next year, we're not gonna, this is what we believe we need.
So to answer that makes sense. I think to answer the question for the line item itself, you captured that because it was a bottom line reduction.
Yep.
And so you needed to capture that to show the actuals.
Yep.
And then it's zeroed because there are currently no bottom line reductions.
That is correct.
I have a question on page 1.
Page 1.
Page 1, 580 travel. 2021, 530, 22, 923, 23, 717. What's our current spend on that?
Look that up.
You can take my motion, Carrie.
Are you looking just for that one line item?
Well, for currently, just because I know this is specific to a specific purpose.
So there's several clicks for, if you're at the airport. All right, so we are currently at $508.
So then if there were to be a reduction in this line based on historical spend and current projection, you would not be overly uncomfortable.
Is this line increased because of something new that's happening that hasn't previously been done?
Well, it's leveled, right? It's
Right.
not increased, but so let me just think back to the conversation with Sophia when she was presenting this to us. We do have we've changed the way we provide services to St. Francis, to charter schools. And so she is projecting additional travel expenses. And as a first-year director last year, she said, I wasn't as good at putting my mileage in as I will be this year. So I think we kept it level because we project that it will be used more.
And with more students going out of district, that requires travel by the special ed director for IEP meetings and things like that, as well as visiting schools.
Have we taken a look at Zoom meetings? Because I get invites all the time for Zoom
Oh,
meetings.
they're not all in person, but
So
when,
then mileage isn't always going to be a factor then.
Well, we do some Zoom meetings when we can. I do
Yeah.
think that's been a benefit of the pandemic, right? We got good at that. But there are meetings where travel is necessary still, signatures
No,
are
and I'm not
needed.
saying it's not, I'm just saying that
Mhm.
the implication that every meeting is gonna require mileage isn't, I'm just trying to clarify that there are opportunities to leverage Zoom and other virtual opportunities.
And we
Right.
do that
Yeah.
pretty well, to be perfectly honest.
But some of those meetings are also the students that are going to a Iowa cost of 120,000. So sometimes when you're there, it's more beneficial than being on a Zoom too. So there's that, trying to make sure everything's working well.
But Carrie, I appreciate that you're asking us about comfort. We've never done that before, and so that's good.
I'm growing as a person.
You are, and I think there is some opportunity here to answer your question, because if you look at the historical and you look at where we are year to date, there's a
So
window.
I have a number in my mind. Let's see if we can like shock everybody and see if we can agree.
We just have
Or if Miss 580
so
Stevens.
far?
Can I have one more question?
Yeah, it was like 580.
When you say that they weren't,
580 actual? It's like-
when you say that people weren't as great about putting in mileage, does that mean that the services that are, I don't know if it's daily, but definitely weekly, being provided to students at St. Francis and other schools, are you saying that the special ed teachers also were not maybe so great about the mileage?
So I'm not so sure about the special ed teacher piece, but if they're driving to St. Francis, you're not talking a great amount of miles anyway. But if Sophia's driving to,
But it adds up if it's once a day.
it does add up, yeah.
Maybe we need to look at a car. Golf cart.
So you think it's more of just not putting the mileage in, then
I think that's a piece of it.
that's a piece of it?
Yep.
Okay.
With a 580, you figure we're averaging 250 a month, extrapolate out 10 months, it's probably $2,500 over the course of the year.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to reduce that line by 2,300.
So I have a
I will
motion,
second that.
have a motion.
That's in the order where I was looking.
I have a motion by Ms. Stevens. I have a second by Ms. Douglas to reduce line 580 travel reduce it by
$2,300.
$2,300. So we would take it to $2,300.
Take it to 2,300.
Any additional discussion?
I would have recommended 1,500.
To reduce
Because
it
I like
by?
to leave a little extra money in the account
Oh,
for
there's
gas.
a lot of extra money.
I know there is.
Any additional discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No.
Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1. Additional motions for special services.
So I actually do have a question based on some of the things I had been reading on some of the stuff. We indicated that the district is responsible for 100% of the first, 3.5 times, right, the average spend?
That is correct.
20% of 3.5 to 10.
Yep.
And then 0, the state or the feds pick up beyond that.
Yes.
So when I look at a tuition of 130,000, the reality is that's above that amount. I think I
Yes.
calculated out to like, what, under 90.
And usually the
So there should
tuition
be-
comes with transportation too. So, yeah,
So there would be a corresponding revenue offset for the difference.
that is correct. That we don't get that corresponding revenue offset to the previous, that means the
Following.
following year. And it might not be 100% of what we want to get or expect to get either. But it's usually pretty close to what we expect to get.
How does that get booked then? If we incur the expenses this year and they reimburse us next year, does it get applied against this year's when you get the audit reconciliation, or does it go towards next year's budget?
It goes towards next year's budget, I think just because it's consistent.
And it's been going on for
and
years.
it's every town, yeah.
No, I know, I just
Yeah,
trying
no,
to,
it's a
in
good
my
question.
mind.
Typically,
I
it
would-
would get booked back, but
Exactly, you would-
it doesn't for this one.
But the revenue in this year's budget that you show us will reflect last year's
Right.
expenses.
Yes.
Okay.
So if it goes down, it's a good thing, because we're getting more than we would expect to get for that current year, but that doesn't usually happen, but.
So, I mean, if the revenue goes down, that means we have less kids.
No, I meant if the
back.
cost of our special education costs went down for some reason this year, but last year they were higher, we'd actually be getting more money in revenue this year compared to what we actually are spending. But it doesn't usually go down, so it wouldn't really work.
The question I had asked you earlier on page 2 about the $51,800, having that money reduced by this committee last year, Did that severely impact special ed? Did you have programs not able to operate or kids not get services they needed?
You're talking in the current budget?
Yeah, because you put it back in.
For next year.
It's put back in for next year. So my motion's gonna be to reduce that again.
So, well, we haven't finished this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the previous year, there was a reduction of maybe out-of-district tuition by 150,000, and we went over, because at the end of the day, we have to follow the IEPs type of thing. But what's different this year and last year as compared to maybe 8 years ago is that we're not filling all the positions, so.
So that 51,000 it's doable.
Well, for this year, it's looking like it's doable because we have a lot of open positions.
Because this is always the hardest one for this committee as a whole, because we never want to take away from the kids, but it's also the one that ends up with a huge surplus at the end. And I don't, you weren't on school board at the time, but Brian might have been. But we had reached out in Olive Branch to the school and said, if you agree never to touch this money for anything else, we will agree not to cut it. That was, and the school board turned us down, so.
Well, the school board agreed to it in public.
Yeah.
This is where it gets slippery.
Yeah.
But we did agree to do that for this current fiscal year, right? We're on record saying that we'll do that.
You did, and on
Next
record.
year as well, right?
For
But,
next year.
but they can't tie the future
No.
school board
You
to.
did not.
We did not do that. We did
They
not
did
have that
it,
conversation.
they did it for the year that they're in, the year we're in currently.
But that was talked about, you just
It
didn't
was
vote on it.
discussed, yes.
But again, even if they vote yes, you change the school board, they're no longer tied to that agreement.
Yep.
So,
So, Mr. Leary, can I make a recommendation that instead of trying to target that particular line item and become an enemy that you're attacking special education, just wait and then put that at the bottom line cut and let both the school board and the school administration figure out whether they're going to, you're giving them options that are in multiple areas. They can either go ahead and take a reduction at that 51.8 there. They could not fill some positions. They could change the school offerings. It's completely up to them, because you just heard the answer that, you know what, they were able to survive because we didn't take it from here, we took it from over here. So a bottom line cut of that amount then still gives them the flexibility to be able to do that.
I appreciate what you're saying, however, we took it from over here because we tried like hell, but weren't able to fill those positions.
Mhm.
And it just so happens that we weren't able to fill positions, and it just so happens that we had a surplus to be able to cover that.
Right, and then ultimately that gets to section 3, which is, okay, if you fill all the positions, as the correspondence was called out today from the head of the teachers, yes, that then, you know what, it then turns into, okay, if I have to offer all of this special education service, that means that I can't offer some other service someplace else that is not government mandated. So there's always a way to find where to be able to find that cut or find that savings, as long as it's reasonable.
I'm confused, though. I'm looking at last year's numbers, and the budget was 1.168, and it says actual was 1.117, so this was actually underspent last year. No, you wouldn't have had to transfer money in.
It wasn't a, Doug, you might say it better than I do, I'll try. It was, what they did is, that line that we're referencing, that Mr. Leary started, let me find it again, sorry, where was it, Bob?
Page 2 at the
Thanks.
top. Under-
Oh, the
under-
58,000.
under-
51,800.
Yeah, no, yeah, I see that, but I'm just looking at the bottom line number.
Yeah.
And it looks like this budget technically came in just barely under budget last year. Is that accurate?
It was under budget last year.
Okay, yeah.
With the
Even with the
$51,000
$51,000
cut.
reduction, yeah.
Correct.
It was probably tighter than it has been in many, many years, but.
And I'm
it was- it
okay
was
with
under
making
budget.
that motion because, you know, it was out of the budget.
Yeah.
It was trying to be put back in, and Doug, in all his honesty, said it is doable. So I will make a motion to reduce.
So, is it,
Well, I said, I didn't say it was doable for next year, because I don't know where, you asked if the 51,000 was doable this year, and I said because we haven't been able to hire positions that we want to hire, it would be doable this year. I can't predict whether it would be doable next year, because hopefully we'll be able to hire not only positions starting tomorrow and for the rest of this year, but we'll be at a better staff
We
place
say,
for
we
next
say
year.
it might be doable this year, but there's also unknowns this year that we're gonna need to figure out,
That's true.
right?
Yep.
Again, food service deficit, significant, that we have to cover, right?
Oh, someone has to cover.
Again, if it, you know, the golden rule, which is never touch special ed, but if we're taking special ed money overages to feed other departments, it becomes something that can be cut. You know, we don't wanna do it, but it's, I mean, there's a lot of money here floating around.
What I can say is the board has committed for this fiscal year to return the money for special education that's underspent.
I would, to your point earlier about how this board went after some of the town budgets because the money wasn't being spent, police station, for example. To your point, if you want to go after numbers, I wouldn't go after this, I would go after the salaries and benefits, because that's where the money's being borrowed from, because they can't fill positions. So if we think there's gonna be money there because they can't fill those positions, I would go after that budget, not this budget,
But the
in my
reality-
opinion.
But the reality too is though, every year,
Yeah.
there,
Every year, this is usually underspent, yes.
Every year, yeah.
But I would look, then target the line that's being underspent. But if you look at like out-of-district tuition,
It-
last
it
year was
ends up
actually
being-
overspent.
transportation,
It'd
it
probably-
ends up being,
Yeah, it doesn't. end up being
sometimes it
transportation.
is tuition, because sometimes, I mean, we're basing tuition today
Yes.
on what we know today, but that might change in
Yeah,
18 months.
sometimes it is. Last year, it wasn't. Last year,
Or
tuition
some other
was
service.
$90,000 overspent.
But it's the bottom line, yeah.
No, it was 40, about 45,000 overspent.
So, but as a,
Okay.
235
yeah.
versus 321.
As a holistic budget, there's
Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong
generally,
Line, page 1, 569.
Sorry, I'm looking at the bottom of page 10.
so, well, we can debate all that. I have a specific question.
Go ahead.
Page 6, software, Mango languages.
Page 6, software, 650, Mango languages. Yep.
So I'm curious, because the library provides this service as well, as to whether or not we can leverage an existing Mango subscription that Aaron Cutler Memorial Library offers.
Public library
The
provides it.
public town library that the taxpayers already pay for, if there was a way to, or have we looked at a way, for the school to leverage a service we're already paying for, instead of having to duplicate that service.
So we haven't looked at that. We didn't know the library had it.
Okay.
This is basically $1,500, which allows us access to 20 seats. That's the number that we're estimating would provide the service to the students that we can identify. I'd have to dig in deeper to know
So
more.
if you could
Are they
look at it.
unique seats, or is it 20 at a time? There's different ways that these software companies
Yeah, I have no
cost
idea.
that.
I just, I'm looking at the library, Mango Languages, online learning system.
I think it'd be worth reaching out to Vicky and asking,
Is there a
could the
way?
school system leverage that service that's being provided?
Yeah, how much is in their budget?
$1,000 currently. So I mean, it's not gonna save it, but at the same time, demonstrate that we're using limited resources wisely by leveraging, we're already paying for it through another service.
Capture
It's
that as a
1,500 in your budget?
I have 1,000. in my
It's
budget.
1,000. It's 1,000.
How much was the first year transportation increase again, percentage-wise?
Significant.
So it depended. It was between like 5% and like 19 point something percent. So 19% was more for the daytime transportation. And then for after-school transportation, for whether it be clubs or athletics, it was more like 5%.
Okay. So this budget would use the 19%.
Six.
This is daytime transport, right?
This budget, yeah, I mean, there's some sprinkled in there as far as runs in the day as well as, monitors, which didn't go up the 19% as well, so it's a combination
Okay.
of the actual increases.
Are you looking at the bottom of page 10?
Sys-Trans document.
Yeah, I was on the bottom of page 10.
What's the number you have?
1487.
And then you have 1,000 for,
Yep, elevation.
Elevation.
so we talked about this at our board meeting. And we decided to leave this line alone because Mango Languages was actually short. The line item for Mango Languages was actually short, and we had a new number of 1,500 for that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but we had a reduction in the Sys-Trans document translation. It'll say times 8, 185 times 8. It's actually 185 times 4.
Okay.
So there was a 743 reduction in that line,
So what's
but a
up now?
500 increase in Mango, so it was essentially a wash.
So we could save even more money if we can leverage the library's currently existing subscription.
I added to the question
I
sheet, so
appreciate that.
we'll try to get an answer on that.
I mean, maybe we can't, but it's worth asking.
Well, there are some where, like that subscription, you just have 20 seats available
Right.
24/7. So some seats are sitting empty, right?
Right.
If it's that model, we might be able to take advantage of that.
Right.
But other times, it's 20 unique seats.
Right.
And I don't know that,
I mean-
I don't know what their plan is for it. So we'll talk to them.
It's worth checking, exploring.
Are you contracted on that?
Any
Is that a contract?
I don't know.
Any motions, additional comments, questions for special services? Or additional motions, I should say.
You think I should wait?
Go for it.
No, I'll go now, yeah. Line 810, other,
Where is it, where are we? What
page 2. I motion to cut $51,800 from that line.
I think, so, I would, well, we have a motion. Do you have a second?
Wait,
So the motion was top of page 2, line 800 other, to reduce it. It's at 0, so by reducing it would take it back to a negative 51,800.
I don't think last year you identified
It was just bottom line.
bottom line.
oh, that is
So-
what the bottom line
So,
reduction.
Mr. Leary,
bottom line, or would you prefer us to target a specific line? Or do you not really care?
Target's easier, I would think.
Well, but then it becomes a slippery slope, because then you get targeted that you're vilifying a particular item and you're overstepping as a budget committee member to dictate to the school board and the school district how they spend their money.
so we still,
And that has happened multiple
so.
times over the last
You're
year.
only making the cut.
hold on.
Yeah, they can still cheaply move it.
Yeah.
Hold on, before we go too far, we have a motion. Mr. Leary, I would recommend that you amend your motion to make that a bottom line reduction. That, totally your call.
Fair enough. I will heed your advice, Mr. Chair. I'll amend my motion to make it a bottom line motion of $51,800.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Additional discussion. And the
again,
only reason I said that was because if you look at the top of page 2, right, I think that was a placeholder that Doug put in there to account for the reduction that we made last year. I don't think that's a real line item. So we're not, it's essentially a bottom line anyway, so I think it just kind of frames it as to what it is.
I think it's probably fair. I was looking at the transportation line personally. It went from this year's current budget, 504 to 695. If you just assume the increase, if you assume the 20% increase, that'd be from 500 to 600, so there's another $100,000 there to obviously cover expected students, but you could probably cut 50 from there and
You're saying if you
probably
took,
be safe, so.
You're saying
It's a
if you-
bottom line, but I'm thinking there's probably $50,000 in transportation.
you're saying, Derek, if you
Maybe.
took the $500,000 and accounted for a 20% increase, it would take it from 500 to 600.
600, yeah.
So
That another 50,000 that covers additional students maybe or something.
it's additional runs for additional students go to out of
No,
the
there is,
district.
yeah.
So-
But you guys always budget worst case scenario, not counting in sharing rides with, someone else and stuff like that. So there's usually money there. Last year there wasn't, so that was an anomaly, but there's usually some extra money there.
However, by doing it this way, now you're taking, the school board was willing to go ahead and pay back or give back any overspend as far as special ed. That 51,000 now would not be given back if it was an overspend and you did it as a
But you don't-
overall bottom line
We don't
budget.
have that agreement though for next year.
We publicly said they were
I
gonna
mean,
do it though.
We have it for this year, the board has not formally agreed for next year.
But we could also have that available to let them go ahead and take that action. If they're making the claim that, you know what, they would consider it and they made the olive branch to us, why would you take 51.8?
Because we used to
Out of
always.
play.
No, because in the past, and I would hate to say how many years I've been on this committee at this point, and I've enjoyed every one of them, so it's great. But every year, we've made significant reductions to transportation and special ed, and still the expectation was underspends would get reduced. Because they use, at least in the past, and previous people who can develop the budget would assume one bus per student, and then they'd say, hey Hudson, we each have a kid going here, can we double up? And so savings would be achieved throughout the year organically because we would find other schools going to the same end location and we could partner up. So we budgeted worst case, never really achieved that because there were opportunities to find savings. We would take the reductions and still receive the return. So I don't know that it's necessary to assume that we can't be reasonable in our budgeting and still expect that the underspend, should the one exist, still be returned. Because quite frankly, I've been,
Mr. John,
Perhaps there-
unrelated but related to underspend, right, in return to taxpayers, right? We already reported that at end of last year, we returned $440 or so $1,000. In addition to that, the board also decided unanimously to return additional money back to the taxpayers right before the tax rate. And that was somewhere in the vicinity of 500,000, if I recall. What was it?
The extra
Monies that came from the state.
revenue.
Yes.
Oh, the
It was
extra,
like an extra two something like that.
Was it that? Okay.
Yeah.
so
Point being,
if
there
you-
was several $100,000 in addition
Right.
that the board did not have to, but we took the responsible action, right? And we returned that money to the taxpayer
When
as
did
well.
that
So
happen?
I think,
Last year.
But that money came as a windfall from the state, didn't it?
it did, but
So
for,
you
But
didn't.
but for specific purpose, but for specific purposes, right?
Unexpected revenue.
It was for specific purposes. One option for us was to return to the taxpayer or use it for other intended purposes that the state provided. We didn't do that.
But operationally, you were going to be okay without that state funding. So that state funding was technically a windfall. Sure, you could have used it on maybe one big capital project,
Point,
or,
I think when I sat through that, the school board was actually very quick to make that decision to return it to the taxpayers.
Yep.
That's what I witnessed. There wasn't a lot of discussion. I almost wish there was a little bit more discussion, to be honest with you. But I was very comfortable with their decision to return to the taxpayers, but that came very, very quickly. It was there.
Point being, if there is extra money to return to the taxpayers, I think the board over the past year has shown through our actions that we want to do that, and we will do that.
the reality is I think that the one time it got burned was the result of somebody's found themselves in trouble financially and found an easy out. And it's not necessarily that anybody here was aware of what was going on, but we had to deal with the aftermath. But since then, we're building the trust again to return that money. So circling back, my point is, I think we can still take reasonable reductions and expect that the underspend would be returned. I don't think one precludes the other.
I would agree with that, right? I think it's our job as the budget committee to represent the taxpayers and what they're saying, and how can we do best by the taxpayers without severely negatively impacting the services provided to our students and the resources that our teachers need. I think that's our job. And just like it's the school board's job to provide the best education, just like it's the town's job, the board of selectmen to provide the best services for fire and police, we've got to look at it through the lens of dollars and cents. And you're right. The school board has done a admirable job of returning dollars both, and I'd love to see where that 200 and something thousand is captured in that tab that shows. Is it captured anywhere that shows that the return? So like if I look at the 442,000 that was returned, it does not. That does not include the 200,000 that Mr. Cutter was referring to.
Was that last
No,
year?
it doesn't. It does not. Yeah. So it's more part of the tax. Instead of getting a certain amount from the state, you got more from the state. So.
I do think the school board has done a great job of returning money, not overspending on end of year fund balance, and I think, to your point, I agree with you, Ms. Douglas. That does not preclude us from finding opportunities where it's reasonable to save dollars for the taxpayers.
And I would just add, and I applaud Doug, you for being honest when somebody asks you a question. It hasn't always been that way. If you had told me that this was gonna impact children, I would have never made the motion.
What was the current motion?
So
Reduce
Wow.
we have a motion to reduce bottom line by $51,800. Any new discussion?
What is this? It looks like there's a whole bunch of bottom line totals. What is the sum total of the special ed budget? I can look it up, but you can punch 10 keys.
It's the
make everything-
1.951.
951.
That's not just that's not transportation. That's
It's
This is what-
transportation.
Everything, yeah.
No,
It's
this is-
everything but salaries, so, because salaries is by itself.
All right.
It's the special ed amount that.
All right, it just
bottom
looked
line
like it
number.
was just transportation. Okay, gotcha.
Any additional new discussion?
No, I think that's a good start. I think it's lower than what historically I would see, so I would,
Well, you can make more if you
well, no,
want.
I'm saying I would vote in favor, but reserve the right to revisit.
Well, let's call the vote.
Call to vote, roll call, Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Cutter,
No,
Mr. Leary,
Yes,
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1. That's a reduction of $51,800 from the bottom line of the special services budget. Any additional motions for special services this evening? All right, seeing none, that takes us to salaries and benefits. This one starts with, it says regular education programs at the top of the page. Currently showing an increase of, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, $436,635.
That's correct.
I am impressed that you were able to get with one staple, does not necessarily have, so, well done.
Do I have any motions for salaries and benefits?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Bottom line cut, $243,089.
243089, bottom line reduction. Do I
Second.
have a second? Motion by Mr. Taylor, second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion?
Based on the reductions that we made, rough math, that brings the rate of increase to 4.5%, which is higher than what the salary and benefits are. But then at that point, an additional factor to offset the fact that the transportation new contract is basically almost a 50% increase.
Your
This
four,
at least gets the taxpayer to something that's a little bit more reasonable, where it's under 5%.
you're talking 4.5 overall.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Did-
if most of the underspend is in unfilled positions, I feel that this is probably the easiest place to go ahead and put that.
Mr. Cutter, what was that unfilled number again? I'm sorry. I know you sent it. I can find
We
it.
don't have access. At least I don't have access.
you don't have access, apologies, let me, get back into that, I closed it out.
Yeah, just the number if you're able to find it
It
quickly.
was, yep, 837,775.
83777.
The attrition number last year was, or last year to this year was 180.
Correct.
Correct.
You guys cut 150 already.
Board has
right?
already actioned 150 for attrition.
So in theory, there's another 30 there just in attrition,
Possibly.
possibly.
670 after.
And the reality is, a good chunk of that could come out
It's
of,
still to eight,
The bonus
that's
pool.
after, okay.
because do we have is there a way to figure out how much specifically, once you factor in all of the social security, insurance, all that blah, 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 that the, on page 44, under benefits and fixed charges would be associated with a non-union bonus pool and non-union admin bonus pool, the total amount.
Do you, Mr. Cutter, any chance you have that in some of your fancy spreadsheets you've created?
Bonus and non-bonus?
Meaning, if you were to total up, I think what Ms. Douglas is asking is if you looked at the bonus pool, non-union and admin, and the amounts, but then also calculating the social security, the retirement and all of that, what that roll-up number would be for bonus. If you don't have that, it's fine. I just
don't
didn't know
have
if you had it.
You must have a rough number you use, like 27% of like,
Which it's just adding the several different.
Yeah, I know, I could do it. I just
So-
figured
I know, I just have to
I haven't
get-
added them yet,
I think it's only the three lines at the bottom, right? Or there are others?
plus the
How many of your,
line from, yeah, the 110 line and then the 222, 31, 232.
taken out, did any of them?
So I mean, you have
Because that's where I'm going.
roughly
That's new positions.
64, you have another 4,
If you want the whole
68.
thing, you need good eyes.
Keep feeding me numbers.
My
Actually,
printer
I
wouldn't
got
do
a
it right.
calculator.
sorry, I have
Right
another
there.
second, the motion?
25, 24,
Okay.
What was it?
24, and another
We're listening. That's what
77.
his motion is.
Yeah,
It's
78, so.
approximately
So
78,000.
of Mr. Taylor's, right there, 78,000 of
new
it could be
positions as
just in the
well.
bonuses, that's what I'm saying, like,
Right, and then that would still say that, you know what, over time, you're still not going to fill approximately 25 to 30% of the current vacant positions, which, you know, what tells me that over the last 3 years, you haven't been able to fill it, that all of a sudden miraculously, we're gonna get to 100% again.
what I'm saying-
I see multiple paths here to be able to achieve that number.
I'm just saying we should take your number, because mine might be bigger.
So it's still, motion seconded, additional discussion on the motion to reduce bottom line by $243,089. Any additional discussion?
Going off of the spreadsheet that we got a few weeks ago, which came through the computer, the school board actions, there was actually a no vote on salary and benefits, a reduction of $250,000.
It wasn't even brought up.
It wasn't brought up
No.
in current open positions. This was on the spreadsheet that Mr. Cutter provided, to.
Wasn't even
to Jim.
discussed as a board. It was,
Why is it on a spreadsheet?
it was in the initial spreadsheet circulated to the board, right? Displayed in public, right? But it was never actually a motion that was made.
He shared his working document with the budget committee because it had been displayed at the school board as a public
He traditionally
document.
does that, and he's traditionally shared it with both.
No,
the
I'm just asking a question.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why.
We
that
have
was-
competing spreadsheets all
It was a
over the
public
place, so-
document.
Which one are we talking
And
about?
he asked me if it was okay to share, and I said yes, because it was a public document that had been
Oh, and then
displayed.
another question is, are there still positions in here that weren't, like, added positions? Was there new, we had new positions on that list, right?
What was that again? Can you say that again, Mr. Douglas?
There were, at this, when we were at the fire station, there was discussion of additional positions that were in the budget. Are those still in here?
There are some.
There's three.
You're referring to the
I,
new positions.
The new-
Grade one teacher, mental health clinician, school counselor, and IT tech.
well, in particular, I would, I'm not gonna have the battle of the first grade teacher. I think there are areas where I could absolutely have a discussion of that and may still. But the mental health clinician, which is probably a very good idea, is still a new position, should be a warrant article. The IT specialist, new position, should be a warrant article. Are those two in this?
Yes, they are.
So then, if I vote yes, then it is not, it was with the understanding that it doesn't, that your number does not represent that.
It's an addition.
In my opinion, so.
What was the amount for the IT tech position? The total, including salary and
91,187.
benefits? What was it?
91,187.
91,
187.
187. And the mental health clinician?
104,187.
104, 187.
And grade one is 95,067.
And then, yeah, that's a bonus.
I
With the grade one teacher, well, let's finish this first and then I'll ask the questions on that,
well, yeah. So
because
any
it's separate.
any changes to this motion currently, or any additional discussion? Sorry.
I think it's important to know that anything that's of like an open position that's a paraprofessional is tied to IEPs, so which are made by IEP team decisions. So like if there was a cut, we have to save that money. So what we'd be doing is we'd be cutting other positions.
Well, that's assuming you can fill it, which we know historically we
Assuming
haven't been-
100% fill,
Right,
right?
which isn't,
Well, no, because
Unopened positions.
if we don't cut from other positions and they end up getting filled, then we're over budget. We can't
Right.
go over budget.
You're assuming, yes.
So
The
we have to
assumption there.
save the money, we'd have to say, okay, so if we need this amount of paraprofessionals, we can't cut from there, so when we can't cut from custodians.
Right.
So we'd have to cut from other positions.
But the assumption is that all unfilled positions are filled, in what you're saying.
That's what you have to almost project out, because at the end of the year, if we didn't, if we just filled everything at the beginning.
Right.
And then we assume that things would be unfilled, then we're over budget.
I
right.
agree.
Well,
I
that's
just,
how you develop your budget.
Right.
To fund it, I think it's, while it would be wonderful to have every student who needs a para to have a para, I can tell you from my experience, that's not likely to happen anytime soon. So, while if they became available, absolutely we need to fund it. But it would also be irresponsible for us to say, please don't spend the money on things you need with the understanding that we'll fund it even though we know it's not gonna get filled.
Well, I think I also, the word reasonable, so I think we gotta budget committee's gotta figure that out too, what is reasonable, because if you go too high, then you're putting us in a really hard position.
But it still leaves $600,000 in unfilled position, open positions.
Oh, no, see, I'm seeing the 91,
If you cut the
187.
250,
No.
or the 243 that he's stating, it still leaves 600,000.
I see it even more than that, Bob, because I'm thinking of the 243 in the bonus pool.
Well, I'm in Christmas season.
And that's 170, so really you're at about maybe 650, 670, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so if we take the bonus pool into his,
That's
I
just
still
my
want the
head.
2 positions out, so.
So are we staying with, are you amending the current motion, or are you
No, so
looking to
I-
have a separate discussion?
I would
Separate
like to have a
motion?
separate discussion on the individual pieces, those individual people.
Let's vote here.
Current motion at hand, bottom line reduction, $243,089. Call to vote. Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Start over there.
we've had this discussion before too, and it messes me up when I do that.
It's going
I
clockwise.
tried to ping pong around one time, and I called people by the wrong names. Mr. Cutter,
No.
Works one way.
that's correct. Mr. Leary,
Yes.
Miss Douglas.
Yes,
I am a yes. Miss Stevens,
No.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Barca,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. So that's a bottom line reduction of $243,089. I'll entertain any additional motions.
so I'm gonna discuss the 2 that I absolutely believe should
Would you
be.
mind, would you want to
So it's gonna
keep
be,
them separate, just for discussion
sure,
purposes?
we can take them
Can we
separate.
make a motion and then discuss?
I will make a motion to reduce in the amount of, 91,187 for all, assuming that's all in,
Mhm.
for the IT tech, the added IT tech position.
We have a second. We have a motion by Ms. Douglas and a second by Mr. Sun. Discussion.
Again, it's not saying it's not needed, but I think the way to put it into the budget is through the warrant article process.
I 100% agree with that. I saw Chris's data. I actually even followed up and had a conversation with Mr. Brunel, trying to compare, because Chris did a great job of presenting people to devices. And it got my brain thinking, well, the town's a one-person shop. Like, how does that correlate? John shared the number of devices with me. The correlation was spot on. Like, Chris did a good job with that. So I'm not saying I don't think the position is not justified. I think the process for it is the warrant article. That's my opinion.
I think the tech integrators was a great example of that. You know what? Went out to vote, and the town found a happy medium between the budget committee saying no and the school administration saying 3.
And I will say publicly, I'll fully support, if this comes forward as a warrant article, I fully support it. Any additional discussion?
I'm gonna be voting no to this only because we already made that cut originally. If that cut hadn't been taken, I might have voted yes.
Any
Which
additional?
cut? Last
That's
one? What cut?
243.
The last cut.
That was from open positions. That wasn't from new positions.
I know.
Okay.
It's
And this
bottom
would,
line. We're
this
talking
isn't gonna
bottom line.
represent a cut necessarily, it's just gonna make a shift to the warrant.
It allows the voters
If the board decides to put it to warrant.
decide to put it back in instead of us making the decision for them.
If the school board decides to put
That
it
would
to
be the
warrant, correct.
responsible thing to do, I would think, if the position is really needed, you go to warrant.
Exactly, explain to the voters why it's needed. The reality is, you make a good case, people will support it, you throw it into the budget in the back doorway, they're gonna be more angry, because like, again, we
I-
slide things in?
I think
So-
there was good, I think the tech integrators is a good example, like, there was a good case made for it.
Mhm.
The first one passed, the second one was really, really close, and there was a lot of other things that were on the ballot that year, but there was an excellent case made. Any additional new discussion?
I agree with both of you, and it should go to warrant. I think the big difference between this one and say like the school counselor, GMS, is that position is gonna directly support students. You can make arguments.
It's part of the reason I asked her to separate it.
Yeah.
I think it
Glad
keeps it-
you did that, 'cause I
It
was gonna
keeps
do
it
the same thing.
cleaner, I
Yeah.
think, for discussion purposes.
Just one nuance that we've talked about internally is that we have IT technicians, right? So the tech integrator was a new position. There were none in the district. That's why the board at the time, I believe, was willing to put that out on the warrant versus this is really an expansion relative to the expansion, which is that we've increased the number of devices. You know, I'm aware of a neighboring district that, a nearby district, not neighboring, that recently had a ransomware attack, and now their whole network is shut down. Kids can't use Chromebooks. Teachers have migrated everything over to Chromebooks, and they're non-operational at the moment, so they're supplementing. The point being, this is why we're asking for this, to make sure that we have the proper personnel. We've done a great job of increasing the number of Chromebooks that we have. So for us, it was sort of like, the kids have arrived, we need a teacher for the kids. The devices have arrived, we need people to take care of the devices and the network. So that's why we've advocated for it to be put in the budget, and we see it as different from the tech integrator, which was a new position.
And that is
So,
a
Dr. Jetty-
compelling argument for deliberative.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
So if the request for the Assistant Director of Special Services was, obviously brought forth by the district, not accepted, I believe, by the school board, would you have used that same logic that based on an increase in special education, that would go in just as a budget item and not a warrant article for that position?
We didn't, because we don't have an existing assistant director. So
But it's
for us, it was,
basically an expansion of that director role that person can't keep up, just the same way that your director of IT can't keep up with the number of devices, right?
well, the director of IT has different responsibilities than the technician. Right? So that is a different lens at it. We're not adding a second director of special ed. I could go with your logic, though. You might be convincing me.
What I'm trying to figure out is, what is the rule and how is it going to be applied, so that way next year, when we're taking a look at this, look, if it is a brand-new role, no one does this in the job description.
That's the lens we've had.
Okay.
However, coming back to the assistant director, so we did put that forward. It wasn't supported by the voters multiple years in a row. And it is resulting in a stress level among keeping our personnel. Our departing director, I think, was pretty clear with the board that part of her departure was, I don't have any help. I'm going to go somewhere where there's help. So now we have a new director, who, by the way, is stressed and probably would love us to put a warrant article on, but if we put it on and it doesn't pass, it doesn't get us the assistance that really is needed.
So I guess then the question, my concern is, we're concerned that we can't sell it to the voters, so we're gonna stick it in the budget anyway. I don't like that message.
I don't think we
it-
said that.
I think
But
Not what
the
we said.
concern is, we don't think it's gonna pass, so we need to put it in the budget. That's
think-
what the
No,
take.
no,
think
he said that
it's-
it's a new position. We don't have an assistant one, therefore we're putting it on the budget where we have an IT tech right now. It's not something that the town hasn't heard of. The town has supported it before, and because of the amount of devices, we need additional IT techs.
So the
So
reality
you're
is,
adding a position.
To me,
is
this
what you're
comes
saying.
down
You're
to how
adding a
you,
position, that's
how
the
you
how
bottom
you
line.
define what is a new position. There's one perspective that a new if we have an IT technician and we're adding a second IT technician, we already have the position. There's another viewpoint of you're adding I look at it as FTE, right? Now, that argument comes back to bite me probably in a few minutes, but that's the way I look at it in this position. I also look at it, and with what Mr. Barca had said, it's just part of my thinking. Yes, Chris laid out a fantastic job demonstrating this, and I will support a warrant article if this is the path that it goes. There are other positions that directly impact what kids do. And I feel that I look at that differently than I do this position. I
So-
still support this position, just not in this budget as it stands.
so I think one of the things that historically, one of the reasons why people were more willing to accept, oh, the enrollment says we need so many teachers, is because there's a legal document, an RSA, that mandates maximum classroom size.
And a
Is
board
there-
policy.
Well, we can, the board policy that was originally rejected by the voters and implemented anyway, that policy?
I
So,
wasn't familiar with that.
it was. It went before, it got rejected, it was implemented anyway. So, but there's no policy that says, based on number of devices, we need to have so many people to manage them. So with teachers, you cannot have classes greater than 28. You can't have so many this. Legally, you cannot go beyond this maximum. There is no such document that says, if you have more than 200 devices, you need this many managers. So at that point, you don't have the same legal standing and obligation to provide that role.
Mr. Chairman,
So-
may I call a question?
Question
I had one more comment.
has been called.
You get another chance in a minute.
We're gonna
Pretty
do
good at that, huh?
roll call vote. And just to recap, this is to reduce salary and benefits by $91,187. Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Cutter?
No.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Um,
It's gotta go to warrant.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Stay in your spot.
I'm a yes. Ms. Stevens?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Barca?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
So my next motion would be to reduce the budget by a total amount of $104,187 in order to remove the new position, mental health clinician, from the budget. And I can't force the school board to put it in a warrant article, but that would be the encouraging intent.
Motion.
sorry.
Second by Mr. Taylor. Discussion.
And
So I'll make my comment that I wasn't able to Cutter cut me off.
Go ahead.
All right, so I just want to make it clear then. So we're starting to go down a definition of, okay, well, if we need more because of more devices, for example, or more special ed students, so therefore we need to reduce the workload on that, then we're not going to sit here and then attack the town if they don't put a new police officer or a new firefighter into the budget, because then it's an expansion of services. Like, I would like to hear a clear definition from this board in terms of when does a new position need to go to warrant article, and when does a new position due to expansion of services go to warrant?
mine's simple,
It
always.
sounds to me like we talked about that if the job requisition is something that somebody does not do today, that is, by the letter of our law, is a new position and should go to warrant article. But I just don't want to see one side get expansions through the budget and another side, i.e. the town or the school, not get.
The selectmen don't, like, they had put a police officer this year, and I think the selectmen didn't realize it. Is that right, Mr. Leary? And then went and took that out to put it to warrant. So the Board of Selectmen do abide by, if they need another police officer, they add it to a warrant article.
Right.
They
Yep.
do. But
And that's
I've said
fine. I just want to
before-
have consistency that
Right.
next year when new positions because of additional need, because there's more roads or there's more houses or more kids or whatever.
I can assure you
Just-
that as long as I sit on the select board, any new positions will go to warrant article. And I will not support a budget that has it
And I-
without going to warrant.
And I think Mr. Taylor, like, this one's a tough one for me specifically, but I'll use the first grade teacher as an example, even though there's no discussion or warrant around that, but we're adding a first grade teacher because of enrollment changes that are coming through. I don't look at that, me personally, as something that falls under this warrant article. I look at that as completely different. Someone could say, well, you're adding staff, but we're adding staff because enrollment are changing and shifting and moving through the schools. I don't see that, me personally, falling under this the advisory warrant article. I'm stating my case why the IT technician. So that's my thinking. To answer your question, my thinking of when I think about all these things, whether it's fire, police, first grade teacher, IT technician.
So I will tell you, I personally will not be making a motion to remove the first grade teacher, because whether or not I agree with the school board's policy on specific numbers, it is where it is right now. So I'm not making that motion to remove that one. I do think we could discuss the kindergarten one, but I don't think we need to discuss the first grade. But right now, my focus is primarily on these
I know.
two very new positions.
And I was
That's where I'm limiting it.
And I was trying to use that as an example to answer
Right.
Mr. Taylor's question.
So to me, this is where my limit is right now.
And I also think that we are behind on adding positions to various departments in town. I think there's a lot of departments that need more positions that we just have not put to warrant.
I would agree with you, but they need to go to warrant article.
Right,
They
and
need
I said
voter
this should have
approval.
been, right,
Plain
they
and
should have been
simple.
presented before this point.
Discussion around the mental health clinician and the motion to reduce by 104, 187.
I wanted to be very clear. It's not that I'm not taking a position on good or bad. I'm just saying this is not I believe the warrant article is where we should have that discussion.
It's a new position, it's an FTE, it should go to warrant.
And I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Because, Mr. Totten, I think you said something earlier, you talked about the math teacher at the high school. Is this moving staff from somewhere in the district, or is this adding a full-time equivalency?
This one's not moving staff.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear in my head.
I think the email that the Budget Committee got today from Stacy Leary she speaks to this position, right? If you look at the levels and what the recommendations are, we are understaffed at Griffin when it comes to counseling. And it's something that is really impacting the ability of our teachers to do their job. I've been down there, I'm in the classrooms. I can tell you it is a different feel now. And that is why we felt strongly that this had to go into the budget. The other piece is that it's not a complete, I'd have to go back and do the math on this, but when I arrived in Litchfield 6 years ago, there was a school psychologist in each building. We now have one school psychologist for the district. And we've increased, because a school psychologist has certain job functions that they can do. And what was happening is our people with pretty advanced degrees, which by the way are harder to hire today, were doing things that were not really within their job scope because they were the extra hands on deck and available. So we've tried to realign. We now have the mental health services at the high school and at the middle school, and it's time to add it to the elementary school. But remember, we don't have that school psychologist. So there's been a shift in the roles, and we can go back to show the exact dominoes of how this has fallen. The need is real. It is pretty pronounced, and that's the point of Stacy's email to you.
And I want to be very clear. I work in a school that has a very strong emphasis on mental health and concern for students. I'm not saying that this position is not necessary. I think this is an opportunity to explain to the voters in a more pronounced way that this is the need. This is our students need our help, and here's an opportunity. We're missing out on that conversation by putting it in the budget and saying, vote yes on the budget. Let's have a discussion. Let's explain it. You never know. People might find that they support the school in greater ways than you realize once people realize the need in the school. But we need to have that conversation and engage the community. So I'm not in any way saying that this is not a necessary position. I'm just saying I think there's a better way of going about it, and that we will gather more support within the community by explaining and showing why it's a need.
But it's also frustrating that we've already cut $243,000 from this budget. That money could have gone to maybe providing offering these positions at a higher rate. We're talking about cutting bonuses of people that are working way overstressed because of all these open positions.
Bonuses, not raises. They still get raises.
Right. You don't think they deserve bonuses for doing all of this extra work? They're
Then put it on a
working
warrant
3
article.
jobs
Let the
in
people
one
vote.
classroom.
Let
I just
the
want to
people-
make it clear that the current budget, they are getting
How
pay
much
increases.
was
But I would like
underspent
to
last
see,
year?
but I'd like to see that bonus pool completely emptied if it's in the budget this year because of them having to pick up on all of these positions. That should be completely spent.
25
We
signatures.
cut more than 243, we cut 243 plus the 91,000.
Right. So now,
And the
so we're
board
really
cut
trying to cut
244,000 on top of that.
And how many unfilled positions have we experienced? How much ultimately at the end of the day, we said 1.3 million, 1.2 million, 1.1 unspent last year.
And how many was returned?
400.
Not all of it.
30%.
I know not all of it.
So that means that we've overtaxed my neighbors and yours significantly. So the reality is this budget should reflect our needs, not what we think we,
These are our needs.
but we can't. So we're gonna fund something you know you can't fill. You're not gonna 100% fill all these. It would be wonderful if we could. I agree, but the reality is you're not.
I think we already took that money out. We agreed that we're not gonna fill those
But
positions.
these are,
That
you
money's
have the
gone.
opportunity to put
I would
this back
argue
in.
this position is a need. It's
So
not a want. It's a
sell
need.
it as a
Yeah.
warrant article, allow the people to vote it back in. It's simply moved out of the budget with the understanding that the school board can get the money for it if they ask.
Yeah, so I'm going to
It's not a no,
I'm
it's
gonna-
just not this way.
try to articulate my thinking on this. I want to start by saying I think Ms. Leary did an excellent job in laying out the needs of this, and I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think this is a needed position at GMS. What I struggle with is based on everything I said for the last 10 minutes, that I don't know that putting it in the budget is the right mechanism to hire that position. And if it is removed from the budget, and it is brought forward as a warrant article, I will, just like the IT technician, I will support it. I will speak to it when we have warrant article discussions. Anyone who asks me questions about it, I'll say these are positions that are needed. They were clearly outlined by the professionals that we have in place, and the best way to do that is vote yes at the warrant articles.
So now the stormwater in the town is now a new requirement from the state. Do we put that to warrant?
That is a legal obligation, is it not?
But there aren't any
So
new
are special
positions.
ed.
Yeah, I look at that differently than a position, based on the way we operated.
So one other
So
thing,
Special ed is
Sorry,
also a legal requirement. And we are not fulfilling that
And I
requirement.
think the fact that school psychologist who we no longer have, I mean, this person's basically gonna be stepping into some of that role and doing some of those functions.
Yeah, if you look back a couple years ago, we had a counselor there and a school psychologist there. We had two people servicing the mental health of the student in GMS, right?
That is correct.
So I guess the
We're not,
question,
it's actually not a new position then. There
So-
was two there. We're just adding the second one
so then
back.
people have supported it in the past. If we believe in it, they'll support it again. So I guess my question is, why are we afraid? Do we truly think people are gonna say no?
I don't,
I
I'm
think
not,
there's a need.
I'm not afraid. I'm just saying, personally, I think this is a need and belongs to the
So
budget.
I
the
agree
reality
it's
is,
a
if we
need.
believe it's a need and people champion it, then we should trust that our voters are gonna see the need and vote yes. The only reason, in my opinion, to not put it as a warrant article is because we think it's gonna fail. Honestly, I've always said that. If we truly believe it's a need, we go out there and sell it. We convince our neighbors. You can knock on doors, whatever you need to do. Convince people that it's needed. Because at the end of the day, if they vote yes, they will support it so much more than if somebody feels like we pulled the wool over their eyes and slid it in at the 11th hour. Reality is, erring on the side of transparency, telling people why we truly believe this is necessary will win you so much more community support than if we just slide it in the budget without a discussion.
Carrie,
over it.
in fairness, we need an assistant special ed director. We need that position. And it was not supported by the voters, and no means no. And if the board turned around and slid that position in and said, you know what, here's a bunch of money in unfilled paraprofessionals, right? The special ed director is now running twice as ragged because we have all these openings. Let's just use that money to hire an assistant. We would then be criticized of no means no. You went against the voters.
So we're
So what
not-
we're trying to do is to develop the budget here that is going to address the needs. And, and honestly, I'm answering it, right? But it's ultimately up to the board in terms
Right.
of what the warrant looks like. We make recommendations, but the 5 board members will determine what that warrant is. And so I'm sure you're being heard across town at the moment, certainly by one board member. But I feel obligated to provide you with, let's play it all out. Let's do the what ifs on this, because the mental health needs at the elementary school are pretty drastic, and they're there.
I don't think I've said that I think this is unnecessary. I think I'm saying, I'm trying to help you gain greater support within the community by being, let's talk about it, let's sell it,
And Carrie, I mean, I take a little offense to the point that you're making as far as us sliding it in or someone sliding it in. This meeting right now is public. It's on YouTube TV. Hold on.
Yes.
Right?
yes,
It's on YouTube TV or wherever. It's no different when we go to deliberative and the 40 people that are there will be hearing it, but no one else will.
Sure,
So
this-
but you're saying slide it in, it's all public. It's all
Perception is
public,
reality,
Carrie.
my
Hold on,
friend.
let him finish.
It's all public.
You know what?
No one's sliding anything.
Perception is reality. We had special election and people still were like, what? We had a special
At
election?
one special election.
I'm just telling you, people are like, people didn't feel like they knew it. So now people are upset because they didn't know about it. So why would we not err on the side of making sure everybody knows what we're doing?
They still wouldn't know about it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. The board asked, just to kind of rewind to the beginning of this process, the board asked to fully understand what the needs of the district are.
Yep.
Right? Our directors, our administration have put forth their needs, right? I don't think it's egregious. I don't think, I don't think that, this is just unnecessary. I think it truly does highlight the state of GMS and the true critical
Okay.
and necessary need for this position within our school system.
So then are we gonna have a hierarchy as to which positions get put forth? Well, we truly think this one's necessary, so we're not gonna put this one to warrant, but this one, we don't really need it, so that one gets to go.
I mean, that's
Like-
what they're elected to do, yes, is to make those decisions.
Yes, but we were advised otherwise
Mr.
by
Carter,
the taxpayers.
was there a
who paid the bill.
discussion by the school board on the IT position or the mental health position being taken to warrant?
Yes, both. The IT position, I made the motion to move that to warrant, it failed 1-3. And the mental health clinician failed due to lack of second, as did the first grade teacher, it failed due to lack of second.
That's unfortunate that nobody was willing to at least have the.
So if I could just make one comment.
Yes.
I hear all the time, and it happened a lot as far as the LMS project, where I was lobbied in order to move my vote because everybody claims that what shows up on the ballot, budget committee supports or budget committee passed 900. I have not heard one person during this discussion say anything about not thinking that there is a need for it. Therefore, you can go under the assumption that a majority will vote for it on the warrant article, and that number will go in front of everybody. Because yes, we have 5 people watching us on YouTube TV, and Brian said he's going to luckily get 40 people to go see him at Deliberative. But you know what? Every single voter is going to see 900, 810, something like that. That is what speaks volumes. This isn't about not fulfilling the need. This is about following a process. That's all.
I'd argue we are following the process. Like, to the first grade point, as enrollment ebbs and flows, we move teachers around and add teachers, move teachers based on enrollment. We had 2 people serving the mental health needs of students at GMS. It was removed because we didn't need it for some reason at that time. We need it again based upon current enrollment and the state of the school, sort of shifting that position back. It's not a new position, it was there before, we're just adding it back based upon current enrollment and current needs.
It's not,
in my opinion.
It's not the same position.
Not the exact same position, but it's fulfilling a very, very similar role. Well, it is, it's a counselor.
It is a little more than that.
Not for nothing, but we saw this on the town side with the part-time police officer. It was in the budget, it was taken out. Chief tried to put it back in. We pulled
But
it.
wasn't that part-time, it had already been replaced another time, and the chief didn't realize it?
He did not realize it.
Right,
It
it
had
had
been
already
taken
been
out. We
replaced.
removed it.
Right.
Any-
So 10 years down the road, can we go back and say, well, it was there once? I mean, what's the time lapse, you know?
We had-
If it's taken out and it's out for a few years, it's a
We
new
had
position again.
550 kids. We should have more.
And I would support this. I have no problem supporting this position, but it needs to go to the voters, or I'll be a no vote on the overall budget. And
Any-
that's just that's my way that I've always done it, and I'll always do it that way.
Any additional new discussion?
You gonna use the gavel tonight?
No, I just think.
Andrew, it's your night tonight. Come on,
Question
let's
is-
go. Say the words. Say the
Question-
magic words, please.
Question has been
Process.
called. So to recap, we are voting to reduce bottom line salaries and benefits by $104,187. Roll call vote. Mr. Burke.
It did come.
Backwards.
To reduce it?
Yes, to reduce it by $104,187.
No.
Mr. Barca.
No.
See, this is totally throwing me off.
All right.
Mr. Taylor.
Confuse
Yes.
yourself.
Miss Stevens.
No.
I am a yes. Miss Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Cutter.
No.
And Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-4-0. And I'll just say, I fully support this as a warrant article.
It's not about personality or need, it's about following the process. And as a budget committee, that's what we should be doing, following the process.
Any additional motions, questions, discussion on salaries and benefits?
Again, you have grade 1, new teacher, new position. With the declining enrollment, are you planning on moving a teacher from another grade down there? Is that the plan?
Yeah, so give me 1 second, I'm gonna pull up my enrollment chart so I can tell you the exact domino on it. Bear with me.
It's a net new position, and the domino is we're moving a teacher down to kindergarten to fill the increased staff, the increase of students there.
It isn't that.
We're maintaining the kindergarten that we added this year.
Then we expand
We are
at one point.
we're adding the first grade because the 5 kindergartens means we're gonna need 5 first grade next year, so that's the add. And then we are reducing 1 in second grade, which will go up to third grade, because that's the bubble that is working through. So that's why it's a -1, a +1, so really it's just adding it.
And I think maybe to Mr. Leary's question too, the 5th kindergarten teacher was added right before school started, that
Correct.
you all referenced your policy, pulled from your reserve fund to add that person
Well, we
based
have
on.
not pulled from the reserve fund yet.
Yep,
We have
my
that
apologies.
available if we need it.
Have the opportunity to pull from the reserve fund if you need to. And that was based on an additional enrollment at kindergarten that triggered that policy that you have in place. So, Mr. Leary, that they added that person right before school started, kindergarten. And now that person is going up to 1st grade and it's in the
So it's a
budget.
net one.
That person's staying in kindergarten.
It's a net new
Yeah,
one.
It's a
yeah,
net
but
new
the,
Net new
They
one.
fall in the cohort, in
yes,
theory.
that was my thinking, but yes, you're
So
right.
it needs to go to warrant.
Person and stuff, yeah.
This is net new.
Yeah, but it's net new, so.
I think to an earlier point too, even though there's declining enrollment in the high school and the middle school, it is going up in the elementary school. So that's where you're seeing that
So that's why I
addition.
asked you if you were shifting a teacher, if you were pulling a teacher from whatever grade and putting it into this position, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, why,
But whereas it's a net new, I would
why not
recommend
take
that it go
the-
to warrant.
math Campbell reduction that you don't need and use that to fill the 1st grade need?
You can't, well, that,
It's
it's
teacher
because
for
where
teacher.
they're certified. So a special ed teacher is certified K through 12, I believe.
But I mean, if you're reducing that CHS math
Yep.
level, and then you're going to backfill that position, why can't you just have a job description that says, I'm not looking for an, high school math teacher, I'm looking for a 1st grade teacher?
We'd have to, there'd have to be a reduction in force of a math teacher from the high school.
Our
So-
union contract's very specific about categories when you take a reduction. So a high school math teacher who's certified, they're typically certified 7 through 12, and a kindergarten or 1st
Okay,
grade
so
teacher.
contractually, you're handcuffed that you
Yeah.
can't do that.
No.
That's all I needed to hear.
We
But on
have
paper
to,
you are,
but
though,
from a
right?
budget angle,
Yeah.
one lens to look at this is, there's one less teacher at the high school and there's one more teacher at the elementary. So budget dollars, it is a transfer of budget dollars. We just can't take that position and move it
I think that was the
because.
point you were
But I
trying
can
to make.
envision this committee in 2 years saying, we have an increased need for a math teacher, so we're putting it back in. Right?
And,
Because that's been discussion before.
and that's what's always been done.
Yeah, so this is a new position, so I think.
It's not a new position.
Yeah, we've
It
always
is a
done
new
this, though.
position.
Forever.
It's a
School
net new
district-
one. He even said net new one.
Yeah, net plus one, but it's
Plus
always
one.
been with the school board, that's how it works. It's like, if
gotta
you have
get-
5 today and and tomorrow you don't need 5, we go to 4.
The
But
reality
would
is,
you rather like the school district just keep all those extra teachers that they don't need? It's a responsible thing to do. It's no different than if a principal leaves, they replace a principal, they don't put on a warrant, that we need a
Correct.
principal.
Correct, but if you had a principal,
No, let's say the principal leaves.
or you had an
tomorrow.
assistant principal,
Let's say the principal leaves
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
You would have to put that on warrant to get another one?
no, not to replace the one that just left, but if you're going years down the road,
It's not
It's a
years down the
different-
road. It's, the thing was with teachers, I can
It's a
say it
net
just because I
one,
lived it,
Brian.
and so did Derek. It happened every year, we'd be shifting.
I think
teachers.
the way I look at this, and I said this earlier.
it's a need, but it's a net one.
Yeah, but I think the way they explained it maybe even helped clarify my position on this. When you look across the board at the total number of teachers, K through 12, there is zero change in the total number of teachers across the district. It would be the same as we said there are 12 police officers and, 5 of them are PM and 5 of them are AM shift. And, all of a sudden you shifted from 7 and 5 to 8 and 4. It's the same total number. And I look at it the same way. There's the same total number of teachers across the district.
But the next year, they say, well, we're gonna put in a new math teacher at CHS because.
Then the
it was-
FTE, the total FTE would go up. And
Yeah,
that might
and
be a
they-
different
But they're not gonna
conversation.
put it to warrant, they're gonna say, we're just replacing the one that was gone.
Might
that we
be a
took out.
different conversation.
It's happened before.
well, I'm less
happened on this
annoyed
committee.
because Mr. Totten just takes the reductions out of the default. So, because in the past, well, actually, I think there's been a law change that requires it, but in the past, we don't need as many math teachers, but we're gonna carry it in the budget anyway.
Are there
We've always
any,
not done that, so
any additional motions on salaries and benefits this evening?
not currently.
I'll
Okay.
make the motion. Reduce teacher grade 1, $95,067. Move to warrant.
Have a
for
motion
the
by
recommendation.
Motion by Mr. Leary. Do
I
I
will gladly support.
have a second?
I have a second because I don't like things to die due to lack of seconds. So, second.
Second by Ms. Douglas.
Only Mr.
Any,
Cutter and I know that.
any new discussion? What was the amount again, Bob?
It's,
$95,067.
Thank you.
and it may be needed, and I would gladly support it on a warrant.
So if I can just chime in, the numbers at the elementary school are definitely fluid. Trying to get the number of kindergartners down has been a struggle. And it's actually been, I'm going to read to you the numbers since we started full-day kindergarten in the 18-19 year: 81, 76, 65, 82, 66, 83. Predicting that as part of this budget process has been a challenge for us. That's why we needed to add that extra position when we got to 83 this year. So we're predicting now for next year 77, but we're confident that we're going to need that, and that's over the trigger number. So we're now at the point where that has fallen. I also want to talk about staffing. I'm going to read you the number of teachers at each grade, starting with kindergarten for the last 3 years. 4, 5, 4, 4, 4, 21 total. 5, 4, 5, 4, 4, 22 total. We're predicting 5, 5, 4, 5, 4, 23 total. The enrollment numbers that we're seeing arrive are basically, that's where our numbers are right now. Griffin is the school that is growing. And so, just a reminder to the budget committee, it's not like we've been just keeping positions in the budget. We've been cutting positions at the middle school. We've been cutting positions at the high school. So the same on the other end of it, when we recognize that we're overstaffed, we're taking those reductions. But here we're just saying when the kids arrive, when we need to put teachers in the rooms and have reasonable course loads, it goes back to Stacy's letter, by the way, and we want to make sure that we have the proper staffing in order to do that.
To be clear, I'm actually gonna vote against this. I think when the discussion should have been had was when the school board changed the policy on kindergarten, because in my opinion, that was actually adding a position. We changed the level of service to that class. But that horse is out of the barn. So,
Any new discussion on the motion at
this one
hand?
is in line with the policy.
All right, seeing none, roll call vote, and I'm not going to mess myself up this time. Mr. Hayes.
No.
Mr. Cutter.
No.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
No.
I am a no. Ms. Stevens.
No.
Mr. Taylor.
No.
Mr. Barca.
No.
Mr. Burke.
No.
Motion fails 1-8-0. Any additional motions this evening for salaries and benefits? Doug, can you change that, you've got it there as a negative still. Yep, thank you, sir. Any additional motions for salaries and benefits? I had a running sum and it was throwing
Not
me off there.
currently.
Are there any budgets that I have missed? Nope. We haven't talked about. We do have the opportunity to come back and visit food service, so I'll kind of wrap us this evening on this portion of our agenda. We have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday. It is also scheduled to be a school vote meeting. My plan, unless committee feels otherwise, is we will start with food service, coming off that discussion, since we didn't really unpack that too much tonight. And then I'll open it up for any additional motions, just kind of across the board with any new budgets. We're not gonna run through them one by one. If they're motions, we'll go there and we'll have those conversations and discussions, okay? All right.
Can
So-
I just clarify for the next meeting? So listening earlier, where are you with warrants? What are you expecting from us and the board relative to warrant?
Can I put a pin in that real quick? And
You
come back
can.
to that, because
Yeah.
I want to capture, finish this part of our evening. So summarizing the cuts that the budget committee made this evening totals $506,563 were the total cuts that were made this evening by the budget committee, just to capture that. Okay, sorry. Warrant articles. Rephrase your question again, sorry.
I apologize. The question really is, what is the budget committee looking for a warrant article development from us?
Yep, so.
We have a meeting next Wednesday. We do not have a draft warrant on that meeting, which means I would not have a draft warrant
For your next.
for this group next Thursday, but I thought I heard you say you were looking for that.
So, yeah, I think you're tying it back to the comment about, on the town side with the police contract, right?
Maybe that's where I heard it from.
Yep.
I just want to make sure.
So, we have scheduled for December 14th, 2 weeks from tonight, is the town and school warrant article presentation. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight. What I think would be appreciated is if in advance of the 14th, maybe not a day before, maybe at least a couple of days before, there was an opportunity for the budget committee to receive those, look at them, and absorb it before we. Goal is the first time they see them not to be as they're presented on the 14th, if that's possible.
I don't know that the board will have an opportunity to even, because we're gonna maybe review warrant articles, but we wouldn't certainly take any action.
We haven't even discussed
We haven't even
it.
discussed them.
You haven't
I mean,
given.
I think the logical opportunity here for budget committee for school board warrant articles is potentially the 21st.
Well, so I think we could have a discussion. You could give us marching orders under business next Wednesday, and we could bring something back for your further discussion on the 21st.
Well, on the 20th to the board.
The 20th, right.
Hold on,
21st to the
working backwards. So let's just work backwards. We have the budget hearing scheduled for January 11th. The week prior to that, January 4th, is when we will vote on warrant articles. Okay? Coming backwards from there, we have no meeting on December 28th. It's the week of Christmas. We currently have no meeting scheduled for December 21st. So,
When does school break?
what's the last day of school? 22nd?
22nd.
22nd.
I would maybe want to wait until Mr. Leary gets back. I'm not opposed to pushing the meeting from the 14th to the 21st if that's the will of the committee. Doesn't negatively impact our timeline at all. We would still have 2 weeks from the time of the 21st for any additional questions or revisions before we would vote on the 4th. I'm not opposed to that.
I think, because we have a board meeting on January 3rd, right? So I'm just thinking, because the board is gonna want some time to review and reflect on warrant articles before we vote, right? So, that being said, I think preliminary, you might be able to see it on the 21st. I don't think any actions can happen until the 4th, because the board will probably take action on warrant articles on the 3rd.
So
I think the other just observation I'll make is that we've done the voting prior to the hearing, and then we've had to re-vote after the hearing based upon feedback that we get. So it's always been curious to me that we have a vote going into the hearing, and then we listen to people, and we vote again.
I think part of that is presenting at the hearing. These are the warrant articles that we support as a budget committee or don't support as a budget committee. So I think part of that process is sharing with the public the votes behind those warrant articles, which I think there's value to that.
And we don't re-vote on those after the hearing unless there's a change.
Unless there's a change.
Or
Or
there's
at deliberative, if
Or
there's a
at
change on the
significant
floor.
public feedback. I mean, if there's significant public feedback,
They might choose to change the warrant, and then we would have to revote. Like the same on the town
because I
side.
think that's what we've done the
Done
last
on the
couple.
town side with the fire truck.
At least one has changed every year after the hearing, in some way.
So, Mr. Leary,
Yes.
we're having a discussion about potentially pushing, and I would be curious as to the town's reaction to this, and if you need to speak with Ms. Kleiner first, that's fine. Potentially pushing the December 14th town and school warrant article presentation from December 14th to December 21st.
We scheduled a selectmen meeting that night,
You
because
have
it was a
us,
vacant night,
you did.
because we were scheduled to meet on the 25th.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't understand how this is an issue every year.
So just wait till January 4th. So we just wait till January 4th.
Can we do
And
joint?
do it all in one night?
Can we do joint meetings like we do with the school budget?
Or what's this?
Like,
Well, I guess-
if we're, or just make sure that we're tuning into the individual boards' warrant presentations. But yeah, I'm a little frustrated because we went over this calendar months ago. And
It's-
both boards agreed to it and reviewed it. and
I would agree with
have
that.
not stuck to it.
If neither the school or the town is ready, then you know what, you present it
We'll be
just as
ready.
a text file. Well, I mean, not for December 14th and then where we would move it to. So then at that point, if it's not ready, you don't present it. We're big people, we can all read. And then we base our vote on that. So I mean, to your point, Kate, everybody knew that this was coming. If you don't show up prepared, it's just like in class. You gotta try to wing it on the fly. Or you turn in a crappy assignment.
Just.
That's what you get.
Can I just respond to the not prepared thing? So, I mean, we've had a little bit of a development relative to a perceived warrant article about a school, right? So that's put us back into a different position. We're at a state of impasse with collective bargaining with our teachers. We have mediation scheduled for the end of December. So there's a number that is way up in the air, and we may not know until January 4th what that's even gonna look like. So just in fairness, it's not a lack of preparation, it really is. There are things that are happening that have not happened in the past to us, and that's why the timeline is just askew.
So to me, that's part of the bargaining process would be, look, guys, we need to come to an agreement. We need to present it. Oh, you don't want to present? Huh? There's another March coming, following. Like, you and I had this conversation in the past budget, and we said, look, you present or you don't. And surprisingly, it got resolved.
So here's what
Serious question.
here's what I'm gonna say right now. We're gonna keep December 14th as it is. Sounds like the town will be ready to share the warrant articles. We will see where the school is at that point. If there isn't anything to share at that point on the 14th, based on a contract that it may not be resolved, and I understand the changes
There will
with
be
the one.
nothing to share that night from school.
Well, then that's unfortunate.
Well,
I mean,
hold on.
fairness,
We
though,
have a framework without
Can I say
numbers in
something?
it.
In fairness, the town's budget was done by us over a month ago. So they've had a month to look at like what we took out and what they want to present as warrant articles. We just cut $500,000 from the school budget, which is gonna have to go back to the school board and have to figure out, okay, do we wanna add a school, do we wanna add, you know, a IT tech, do we wanna add a guidance counselor? They have to look at all those different decisions and make decisions.
They have a shorter time window.
They have a
I don't
much shorter
disagree.
timeline.
I don't disagree with you on that.
And unfortunately, that January 11th is like hard-coded. It has to be whatever, 30 days prior to deliberative
does.
or something,
Yeah.
so.
So that's why we're working backwards from January 11th.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a true statement. Here,
Is there even a shell of warrant articles that could be presented even if numbers are not?
I mean, again, the board has given no discussion at all, no consideration to anything as
I
a
mean, there's-
warrant.
But
So
that's
it's hard for
Right,
me to
like
say yes
even-
or no.
right.
Even
No,
this,
so,
could it be discussed? Like,
so here's what I
there's
would.
maybe a school, there's maybe a contract,
Here-
there's maybe this.
But that's.
Well, I think the
supposed to be-
board really needs to talk about, I mean, these positions, right? And I don't know that we're gonna solve that in one meeting,
So here's what I would ask. You have a meeting on the 6th, right? School board?
next Wednesday.
Okay.
And it's a full agenda. Like, I'm just saying.
Special meeting.
I think having a discussion about your timeline on warrant articles would, I can't control your agenda, but I think it might not be a bad idea to see where we are and are we gonna be prepared for the 14th? If the school board feels like they're not gonna be prepared for the 14th, then a communication from the school board chair to myself that says, give us some options on how we're gonna do this. I think let the school board have a discussion, and then as a committee, we'll try to figure it out. I don't know what else to do at this point. I don't wanna go in and add another meeting on the 21st.
Please don't.
Well, this room's not even available. 'Cause
Yeah,
the
we'd
selectmen
have to
are
go
right here.
somewhere else. We're not gonna meet the week of the 25th. I think our alternative at that point would be the evening of the 4th, when we're voting, probably becomes a little bit longer of a meeting, where we're gonna
Which
have
then we have
to.
to vote to suspend our bylaws because we're not supposed to be voting on the same night as presented.
Correct.
I'll waive them for one meeting.
Why is it the budget committee every year has to be put in a position where we have to change our rules because other organizations who know the schedule 6 to 9 months in advance and agree to it still can't meet it?
I don't disagree with you. I think there were things out of their control at this point. I'm not a fan of it either, but I also wanna make sure, I think the important thing is, we have time to hear the warrant articles, ask questions, and then vote. And we're gonna have to find the time to do that. Might it mean that we meet twice the week in January 1st? Perhaps. I don't know.
It makes my no much easier. I'm just telling you right now. Like I'm already.
Any additional
I don't think
discussion?
that's a shock to anybody, Gary.
That's a spirit.
Any additional?
Well, it's a lack of. it demonstrates to me, like, if we can't get it ready and we're throwing, what happened the last time we said, hey, I'd like more time to review it before we put it forward?
Look, I think the superintendent's did a nice job laying out kind of the scenario in the hand that we're dealt at the moment.
We're not gonna solve this problem right now.
So I'm gonna go one step further, and the board doesn't know this yet, but
Great.
we're engaged with conversation about bond counsel, because when you add a bond hearing in, there's a whole other set of legal requirements that you have to follow that don't play as cleanly with SB2 deadlines as you would think they would. So, we have an incredibly tiny window to have a bond hearing in addition to the budget hearing. You decide when your budget hearing is gonna be, right?
Well, it has to be January, it has to be 30 days prior to,
It has to be between January 11th and January 16th, I believe. And so, this is, 16th is the deadline to have it, is my understanding.
but I think that would be dependent upon when deliberative is scheduled, right? That would mean deliberative would have.
There's a state form with all the dates.
Yeah, well, we have that form, and it'll
Yeah.
come forward to the board, but the bond window is between the 12th and the 16th. So we're trying to figure out, how do we do all of this, right? There's another wrinkle that we have to make sure we meet.
Well, I would seriously hope that somebody would look at this and wonder if the signs aren't that we're trying to push too much too fast and should slow it down to make sure we actually have a comprehensive plan with an actual understanding of exactly how much we're looking at. Because the last time we rushed through something really quickly, it didn't end well. So let's take a lesson from that and actually take the time.
What was that, Gary?
Where was that?
What was it you're referring to?
The
LMS.
LMS project that was significantly under budgeted, overspent, however you want
I
to
just
call
didn't
it.
know what project you were talking about or what
The
you were
one
talking
that
about.
I was like, should we take a year to make sure we know what we're getting into, so we have full understanding of the costing? And then the argument, well, it was.
All right, I don't need an explanation.
Okay.
I just
Alright.
didn't know what you were talking about.
Let's not go there again.
Next steps, my request would be that at the school board meeting on the 6th, a discussion about the timeline
We'll
for.
bring this back to the chair and we'll let the chair and the superintendent decide on the
Thank you.
agenda.
Thank you.
Maybe one of the options is, because, like you said, the school board works on a smaller timeline, right? And we do joint budget presentations.
Yep.
Maybe the budget committee could join for that Wednesday school
I
board
think
meeting
that's a potential option.
as an option to discuss.
Oh, on the 13th or 6th?
I think they have a meeting on the 20th.
Oh, that day, okay.
Following one, yeah, so that would be.
I think that's
Which-
one potential option.
We, could be just watched over YouTube or the budget committee.
Yep. And it might be that people that are not able to be there might have to watch.
I mean, if we
virtually
throw out
next
ideas
Raise
on warrant
viewership.
articles in the 6th and we talk about that, and then the 20th, we have a framework for what those warrant articles may look like, right? Then the board can effectively vote as or get to be a more final state at our meeting on the 3rd. Right, because same thing, if we're looking at a warrant article on the 20th, I'm not gonna be in a position to vote on that warrant article, right? I need time to digest it, I need time to understand it, I need time to make sure it's right
Isn't
before
that
I
the-
vote on it.
Similar to the school board, you didn't vote at those joint budget presentations.
Correct, they did.
Correct.
You had another.
I see what you're saying.
Another meeting after.
So
It's just a
it
suggestion.
could
I
be an-
actually love Kate's idea.
It could be an opportunity to.
We saw so much efficiency when we stopped having each department come in here after they've already presented to the school board. Let's use the same efficiency. I mean, it seems
I
like
think
a
that's an
no-brainer.
option to discuss, and if the school board is okay with that, then I think we will discuss that at our next meeting on the 7th. Okay. All right. Mr. Cutter, any updates from the school business this evening?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Cutter on school updates, school business this evening?
Not a question for Mr. Cutter, but before Mr. Tutton leaves, just
Yep.
one quick question on like the CHS class size. You know, we've got, in that it ends up being a little quirky because you've got, chemistry honors. And is it safe to assume that like the first chemistry line and the first chemistry honor line, those two are in the same class and then the next two are in the same class? And you don't have to answer it tonight.
I'll
I
let
just wanted
Dr.
to-
Jetty answer that one.
That's
more,
actually
so-
my spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
Bear with me.
It can be a follow-up
Yeah,
if we need
that's
to, just
perfectly
because of time.
That's how I read it, though.
Right, is it like chemistry with 6 students has 3 additional students that are honors?
Where we got this one?
Or is it that, it's 17 and 3? Like
No,
that's all?
those classes are together,
They-
so.
They map up.
They're physically in the
I
same
can't tell you exactly how they're linked, but it's like 17, 17, 6 are the three chem numbers.
Yep.
And then you've got the 5, 11, 3. Those are additional students, but the class meets at the same time, so the kids
One
who are in the
teacher,
room-
all those kids are
Yep.
together. 3 classes.
What I can't do, I'd like to say the 11 gets added to the 6 for 17. It has to, because you can't be adding 11 to 17, you're over the state guideline. So the class with 6 in it has to be coupled with the 11 in the honors.
Okay. Any,
That makes sense.
any additional questions for the school tonight? All right, member input.
Just a statement that, I don't know if you guys had heard or not, but there was a lawsuit that was brought forth and was won, that the state now has to increase their funding for students within the state.
Not exactly what the ruling was, so.
Well,
Yeah,
it's almost gonna be doubled.
Well, the ruling is that the amount that the legislature is currently sending does not meet the threshold of adequacy. The judge said, because the folks who brought this suit forward were actually asking for a number closer to 10,000, it was like 9,000 something. And the judge said, well, it's at least 7,000 something, but now it's back to the legislature to try to figure out. Well, that goes back to Claremont 1, 1993.
But it's a court order, so, I mean, they
So
kinda
was
have to
Claremont
follow a
1.
court order.
So was Claremont 1.
it'll be,
and we're
I
still
saw,
fighting this.
I saw that article. I posted it in the questions. I linked it to the WMUR article asking the exact same thing, and what Dr. Jetty just said is what is in there as well. That was my thinking when I looked at it too. I'm like, great, that's additional revenue coming into the town. And when I read his response, it made it, well, yes, but the legislature still has to appropriate that money.
Correct.
And the state
Which
hasn't
means it's gotta
appealed it
come
to Supreme Court yet. Because you know the state is going to appeal that ruling.
Right.
That was one district court or superior court that made that ruling. So
I got a
this
little-
thing is years away.
Yeah, I got a little excited when I saw it too, but I think I calmed down once I.
I got excited 20 years, 25 years, 30 years ago when they came out with the first ruling, right? And they still haven't acted on it, guys.
But I
So
think you're bringing up
it's-
a good point that the state is underfunding education, and it's especially felt in a place like Litchfield, which doesn't have the commercial base. You know, like if this went through, Litchfield, if everything else stayed the same, this year would have got 3.7 million more from the state. So as we try to figure out what a reasonable number is to decline our budget by, our budget, which if you look at how we're compared to the state average for spending, we're lower. We're lower. But we also know that we can't be higher because Litchfield, you know, it's the property tax people who are footing the bill. But something needs to give, because everyone in Litchfield goes to, like Dr. Jetty says, they go to Hollis, they go to Manchester, they spend their money there. The stores there pump their money into Manchester schools, Hollis schools, and not Litchfield schools. So something needs to change, because we are at a tough spot where, you know, Mr. Taylor says, you know, the tax people, they're an important part of this too, and they are, and it's not set up the right way. This ruling affirm that to a lower number of 7,000, which we all know it's not 7,000 either, when the state average is 19,000.
It's a step.
So hopefully it's a step, and hopefully sometime it will result in something.
So I know I'm coming across like the pessimist here, but it's a step. It means 3.7 million to Litchfield. Multiply that across the state, and then ask yourself, where's the state going to get all that money from?
It's gonna come
So
out of other services.
there's a problem, and
You're
so
increasing your state.
we're just, what the ruling has said is the definition of adequate and the way the legislature has implemented that is not meeting that need, but if anybody thinks we're gonna solve that in the next biennium, we're not.
I'd also be concerned that our legislatures will then like increase the vouchers. Oh, well, we gotta give more money.
All right, let's move to, seeing it's 10:05, let's move to member input, new business. School facilities has not met since
Wednesday.
last time. There's a meeting on Wednesday. I don't know if you want to add anything about
Yeah,
that.
just to share, so, we have been meeting with the architects and the construction managers, so there will be a presentation by Kyle, at that meeting specific to the project that is being developed. It's not being rushed through, just to be clear. We've taken the school that was already developed for the land across the street, and we are relocating it on the back of the GMS lower area. And so a lot of the design development has been done. There was some work that needed to be done because before we had a sloped lot, we now have a flat lot, so we've had to rethink and redesign some of the space, but it hasn't been very costly to do that. And so it's not a rush job. We're just relocating where that school is and thinking about we would access that, like when everything is said and done, what will it look like? So that'll be the preliminary look at that. And we've also been able to get tighter on the budget. So there'll be a budget number shared, and how we got to that budget number will all be shared.
So next meeting, Wednesday, December 6th, will be public meeting and also streamed live for those that want to watch. Thank you.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Capital improvement.
Hopefully they met, right? They presented to the planning board.
So
Board of
the-
Selectmen.
Yeah, there's a presentation of the Board of
And then there has to be a
Selectmen.
public hearing, so I
That was
think.
already complete, public
Yeah.
hearing.
Thank you.
Presentation of the board's complete, it's been approved.
And so what's
It
the
was
next?
accepted, not endorsed.
So what's the next?
The Board
step?
of Selectmen has to
That's it.
decide what their, what.
Board of Selectmen decides the priorities.
School board decides
Yeah.
priorities, and I think the next meeting will be in
April.
April.
I heard Mr. Croto say April. Okay. Energy Committee. There was a public hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
There was a public hearing. That's what I know.
Good.
That's my input. It's posted. So
I
YouTube.
believe there's another.
Go watch it. Open it up for public input. Seeing none, close public input. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Mr. Hayes. Second.
Nice job, Mr. Hayes.
I don't have a
That was nice,
second.
quick-
Second.
Second by Ms. Douglas. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries 9-0-0.
I want to hang out.
Have a great evening, everyone. We will be meeting next week, December 7th. Good night.